Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's a distinct honor and a pleasure to present to you the next guest on the Mic Drop podcast. Today we have joining us a former U.S. Navy SEAL for 11 years, including 8 years at Development Group. He did 8 deployments total, including the USS Maersk Captain Phillips rescue. He is a certified strength and conditioning specialist, or CSCS, as well as TSAC. Ladies, that's right, you heard it, TSAC, qualified and has distinction certifications in both. He is the current owner of the physical stress mitigation company, which is called Performance First US. He does physical training, recovery, and consulting. He is a father, an exercise physiologist, a teacher. He strives by the methodology of purpose, process, love. His beard makes its own fucking oil. And ladies, yes, the carpet does match the curtains. Please welcome Jeff Nichols.
I appreciate it. That's probably one of my favorite intros.
Yeah, but
we'll go with it.
one of my goals here at Mic Drop is to kick off every interview with an in-depth and thorough yet smart-ass intro to grab people's attention right out of the way. So I always like to say something smart-ass.
I'm curious if you actually have women listening to the podcast.
Oh, hell yeah. It's mostly ladies. There are. It's one of the interesting things about the demographic of Mic Drop, and I'll take this second to continually thank the listeners, but we've gotten messages from people that, like, I would have bet almost anything that I would have never thought, like, this woman is listening to the podcast, or like some super liberal anti-gun left-wing beta millennial guy,
right?
Or a fucking Mormon grandmother that's 67 and fucking crochets doilies for the couch most days. Like, it's truly astounding the wide swath of variance in not having a stereotypical target audience or specific listener. I mean, yes, there are a lot of working class, blue collar, patriotic military type supporters, but and listeners, but I wouldn't even necessarily put the percentages at them being the majority. Like, it's a pretty interesting dynamic. But first off, I just want to say thank you for coming. I know you're busy as shit. You're looking to move, as we talked about, and coming all the way out to bumfuck Cooper, Texas. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule.
Yeah, no, I don't. Living in Virginia, not that it's not possible, but I don't often get myself on a highway or an interstate where I can just put it on cruise, listen to a podcast, and you just don't really get that in Virginia.
Yeah,
with all the swamps and whatnot. But no, I appreciate you having me out, and I think that's. I've really enjoyed podcasts just in general for a long time, and I think it's kind of your point. I think people are really starving for long form communication with people that aren't afraid to, tell the truth or be aggressive in the nature of what they believe in.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me that was kind of the premise in which Mic Drop exists, or it was born and bred out of that. I know for me, like, that's what I enjoy. One of the things I can't stand about media outlets is they get an interesting fucking guest on for 90 seconds with 5 other people, and it's like, what's the fucking point? And they do. It's like the Sesame Street mentality. Mm-hmm. Like, they do 30 segments in a fucking hour-long show, and they have these people on that have good things to talk about. Or even if they're fucking dumb, like, I still want to hear about it, Like, I want to hear people argue and bring their points up and be heard. And I think it's, you can tell that, that it's severely lacking in our society based on how popular that medium is at this point. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into talking, a little bit about the military background, just because of some of the fucking awesome, remarkable things that you've done. But even more importantly is just your depth and breadth of knowledge in terms of exercise science and recovery. And it's something that I'm big into, and a lot of the listeners are. We've had just overwhelming numbers of supporters that are fascinated and super interested in a lot of this stuff. So I'm pretty fucking jazzed to be able to combine these two and bring them.
Yeah, see, like your garage is Right off my own heart. There's no room at all to park anything with wheels other than your bike. It's all weight equipment.
Yeah. I mean, especially living out here. I mean, the closest even gym and that's an Anytime Fitness is 30 fucking minutes away. You know, like I'm not going there. You know, so like the closest CrossFit gym or functional gym. I mean, there was one up in Paris, about 30 minutes away. I don't even know if it's still there anymore. I joined it when it first started, but even that, like, to drive 30 minutes and, just...
It's, best case, right? It's an hour. Yeah. It's an hour that you're like, okay, can I be productive?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I have too much shit to do. And the other thing too, from an accountability standpoint, which we're going to talk about garage gyms here in a little bit, but it holds me accountable because I walk by the motherfucker all 30 times a day. You know, it's like, it's just sitting there staring at you. Like,
oh shit, that bar hasn't moved in 3 days. It's time to get in there.
It's like a good woman in there just telling me to fucking use it.
Yeah.
When I get a little serious on you. So we'll do a quick lightning round and just get the juices flowing. I like to throw a couple of curveball questions before we get into the heavy shit. What is the dumbest thing you've ever done?
Wow. Okay, let's categorize dumb as in something that's like universally can be heard by the population listening. Let's do that first. The dumbest thing I've ever done.
Do we need
I've done a lot, but I think there's one thing I did. I remember I was a new guy. I mean, we'll keep it kind of relevant to my Navy experience because I've been a part of some pretty interesting practical jokes and stuff that's viable in that community. But I was my first year in the team. I was at SEAL Team 5 and had just like the group of guys that I had at that team I got super lucky, man. My entire time in the careers in my Navy was great leaders, but. We were at Seal Beach in Hermosa, or is it Huntington? Huntington Beach, Seal Beach. Yeah. And they have the gas and oil platforms, if I'm going to guess, 15 miles or 10 miles off the coast.
Yeah, Los Alamitos, right?
I can't remember. Honestly, I don't really remember because it was my very first ever trip as a SEAL. No, it was my second ever trip. But anyway, we were getting egged on by some of the senior guys, like jump off, and it was a full. Well, the fourth story was the helo.
Yeah,
it was 111 feet off the water.
Yeah,
and we had a guy did jump off it, and he got pretty beat up.
No shit.
And I was like,
you'd break your fucking ankles jumping at that height.
Andy Arbito, the guy that only half-face blades did it. Like, and I remember him we had wetsuits on because we were just hooking and climbing and such.
Yeah.
But I was like, I ain't doing that. I was like, okay, I'll do the smart thing and go one level below, which was like 73 feet. And there was no relief. It was awful. That was when I hit the water, I was certain that I had dislocated my shoulder, broken something. In retrospect, or in hindsight, as I look back, it was like a really bad stinger you're going to get in football.
Yeah.
But instead of in your neck, it was like lower spine all the way up.
No shit.
So that was stupid.
Especially because you did exercise science before you even came in.
Yeah.
That was your first thought. I was like, God, I'm fucking retarded.
This is stupid. It's like my spine is not meant for this.
Yeah. Oh shit. Fucking accordion the old.
I think probably what saved me, or any of us, was that it's choppy. It's choppy water. If it had been a calm day.
Yeah. You'd be like jumping on fucking concrete.
Yeah. We may not be talking.
Yeah, no shit. Favorite Saturday morning cartoon? Back in the day.
Back in the day, it was definitely He-Man. Masters Universe.
Yeah. It's not much of a stretch for you, I don't think. No. Favorite 80s action show?
Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, it's tough to beat.
Yeah.
That's racist. Fucking, I was always a big MacGyver fan.
I did like that too, but the Fall Guy was good too.
Yeah. I always liked Airwolf and fucking Knight Rider. It was one of the things I was talking with somebody, it may have been Dave Rutherford. We were talking about just the lack of it's so toxic masculinity nowadays in media and pop culture. Like there's no good shows that give, boys and young men anything to fucking strive for,
it's all given.
Yeah. I mean, like Miami Vice and A-Team and Airwolf, Knight Rider, Street Hawk, fucking, I wanted to say Blue Falcon. It was
what was that?
Thunder. I can't even remember the name. Some other fucking badass helicopter.
Yeah. You said Airwolf already.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Fucking Jan Michael Vincent. Stringfellow Hawk was his name, I think.
Yes.
But fucking great shows. But there aren't any of those anymore. Like it's fucking pathetic.
No, we're and no disrespect, but that our generation is watching Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a huge physics fan, but
yeah.
I'm probably not going to take my masculinity notes from a physics professor.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, yeah.
From what the fuck's the kid's name on that show? Cooper, or whatever the fuck. But yeah, I mean, like that. But especially like young kids shows, like my kids. I mean, they don't watch hardly any TV, and we've never let them, spend much time watching anything. It was more like kind of almost a reward, to watch a show here or there. But just the shows that are on, that are available, whether it's Nickelodeon or Saturday mornings or mainstream anything, I'm just like, dude, this is fucking terrible.
It's all garbage. Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's like, let's talk about each other.
We just diluted it so much because like when you're going to instill, if you're going to instill, you used to watch, I guess, G.I. Joe, right? The cartoon. They always had that public service announcement sort of, and you could tell that the episode was geared towards, don't be an asshole, or, obviously they weren't saying that then, but it seems to me that like if you're going to gear a show that has a moral, you're going to have to potentially have some controversy in that 22-minute show. Yeah. Well, we can't have controversy, so now we've eliminated the hero. Yeah,
everything's so fucking vanilla. It's like like our society tends to. It's like they go out of their way and bend over backwards to ride the fence on everything. And to me, like that's the worst fucking way to go about it. Like, have some conviction and pick a fucking side. You know, like you piss everybody off when you don't pick a side. Like, stand for something.
Right. And you can't be moderate on everything all the time.
Yeah. You can't play.
I think about the only time I feel like I'm truly moderate is when I don't understand.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably where you should be.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of times like, I don't know enough about it to have an opinion. Like that's fine, but. To take the fucking Switzerland approach with everything drives me fucking nuts. But current or last book you read?
Wow, I went on a bit of a tirade. The book I'm reading right now is, I'm sorry, I'm having to pull up my phone just because I've had too many damn concussions.
You jumped off of too many.
It has a word humble in the title. I know I'm rambling. So again, we'll get past that. It'll come to me. But like for me,
what's the gist of it?
The gist is it's not. It's ego. Ego. Ego is the enemy. I think that's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially just taking a step back, deeply looking at. Again, we already kind of really talked about it. Like take a step back, look inward, and go, all right. Am I making my decisions based off of pure desire? Am I making decisions based off of desire and like knowledge and intent? Or am I or have I really decided to fully develop the idea and then slowly, release that idea with, we talked about like off camera, but off mic was my, I have a history, or at least I say that I do a bit of a history of being a certain way in my time in the team. Is pretty angry and those sort of things. And I think that's really what the book is kind of about, is like, all right, you can, if you're a type A personality, we'll say that, and you are an aggressive go-getter and that's what you're going to do, there's a bit of ego that has to accompany that. Certainly. Yeah. It's when that ego becomes the intent where we get off track and we see something in the distant future in our mind and we go, that's what I want to do. Yeah. And historically, or we've seen it from people that have gotten there, we go, well, that's how I have to get there. I have to do it this way, and I have to be aggressive, and I have no room for humility, and I have no room for helping other people out to get there. And that's what that book for me is about, is just looking in.
Yeah, no, that's good shit. I know for me, and I think for most people, I mean, where you run into problems is when you're basing decisions, be it business, personal, or otherwise, based off of supporting your ego or fulfilling it, or at a minimum having it influence you. When you're making decisions that have a lot of emotion behind them, they're generally the wrong fucking ones.
Right.
You're making the wrong decision and for the wrong reasons, and that can be a tough thing to do. I mean, I know especially for guys like us in business and just being like AA personality, super competitive, it's hard not to, either take things personally or one setback and you're like, motherfucker, and you overcorrect because, this didn't pan out quite how I wanted. So I'm, like that's just as bit as, or every bit as dangerous as falling on the other side of not being proactive or not being aggressive or whatever, So
I agree.
You definitely have to have a balanced approach with that. And that's a hard thing to temper sometimes. I know for me, jiu-jitsu provides a hell of a platform for humbling my ass,
Yes.
Whether it's running out of gas or being humbled by somebody smaller and weaker that's just far more technically savvy than I am. And the neat thing about, doing it with other people in other parts of the country is exactly that, is that, you never walk out of there pissed off. You never walk out of there, feeling like you got to go prove something, like it does wonders for that, I think, and certainly balances me out. And there's a lot of other things too, but for me, I think there's an element of that I don't get out of weight training. I mean, you certainly,
for sure.
You certainly blow your wad and
Yep.
and satisfy that mental and physical itch to get that out of your system and exercise, some steam, but it's just different. For me, that makes a big difference. But it sounds like a good book.
Ego is the Enemy by, there we go. It took me a minute. There we go. Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. It's a short read.
Yeah. It's a pamphlet.
It's a bit of a short read, but for me, I don't normally read the preface. I normally don't. I don't usually read the introduction. I read them both because there was something about it that I was like, okay, I don't want to miss something, because when anyone's talking about ego or talking about something, and it's funny because that was the first statement. It was like, all right. I know the readers out there wondering, well, who the fuck are you to tell me about ego? Yeah. Like what qualifies you? It's like, how do you become an expert in that topic? When you read his bio, you go, oh, okay.
He's a professional asshole.
He is a juggernaut in the business world. Yeah. He's made a bunch of mistakes. He's done this and he did it all. And then when he, I won't spoil it for you, but it's a good book.
Yeah, no, I'll fucking we'll make a note of that and see about getting him on here. I love to talk about shit like that. I think it'd be real relevant for all of us, especially myself. But this is one of my favorite questions, which is when was the last time you shit yourself in public? On the way here? Was that
No, I did. I almost did last night though, for sure, man. Jeez, it was just a weird travel day and too much fish oil before I went to bed.
Yeah.
So I have only shit myself accidentally once.
Yeah. How many times have you done it on purpose? Other than buds.
Oh yeah. Other than buds? None.
When you say accidentally, I'm like, have you done it on purpose?
Oh, yeah. A couple times. Yeah. Hell Week, some of the swims.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Standing in the chow line.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
All right. So the accidental one, what time was that?
I was in 6th grade.
And
it was a bad timing because my mom had just bought me these yellow sport pants or shorts. It was in the summer and
Jesus.
I thought it was a fart, but it wasn't.
Fucking Christ. I love it. All right, so the last question, I usually ask this one first, but given the nature of the subject and content of this podcast, I knew that would lead into other shit, so I'm going to ask it as the last lightning round. But what is your morning routine? And I'm incredibly curious as to what that is.
It's pretty regimented, believe it or not. It used to not be. Probably not a big surprise there, and we'll get into why it wasn't much of a priority for me. Mm-hmm. It's arguably one of the most important things in my day.
Yeah.
Even when I'm here, I do. Even when I travel, as long as I can still do a couple of things in my head that say this gives me some sense of normalcy. I have extreme anxiety, which is also kind of a part why I came a day later.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting there, no kidding. I was sitting in my house 2 days ago, and there was some. I use it as an excuse. I'll be honest with you. There was some complication with the flight and hotels and rentals here just because of the hurricane. And a lot of people have kind of come to Texas for that because of that. I remember I was standing in my house 2 days ago and I had just this overwhelming, truly debilitating anxiety that I get every now and again. And I literally, it was 30 minutes before I had to get on their plane. I just called Delta and I was like,
Oh shit.
Just let's switch this up.
Is that something that stems from service, or is it something prior to, or what?
I think it's a combination of things. I don't normally have it's ego. I spent my entire time, in the military and my young adult life being a bit of probably a not probably. I was a bit of a control freak. I was truly a control freak in everything that I did. And that's how I lived my life. I made plans and I would just jam that square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that I did. So my morning routine really looks like this now, is because it was born out of necessity. You know, I was, again, I'm not embarrassed about anything I've done in my life necessarily. I've had some bad points. I had decided I was going to kill myself. And that's where it was born from. It was like it was this control that flipped, and I was like, okay, I got to get control of this, but I've got to do it in the sense of, I'm not going to get a chance to have a morning routine if I don't get my head on my ass.
Yeah.
You know, so my morning routine is I wake up every day about the same time. It's not super early. It's usually between 7:30 and 8. That's for me, as I feel like that allows me to, because my morning routine really starts the night before.
Yeah. My
morning routine starts at about 9:30 at night. I put my son to bed, and then I spend usually about the next hour and a half meditating, stretching.
Oh shit.
Post shower. And then when I wake up, the first thing I do is I read. Right next to my bed, I have like my daily devotional. The first thing I do is I read that. Mm-hmm. And it just gets me something to think about. I go feed my cats, and then I sit outside and I get as much sun as I can in 30 minutes. Because there's some certain physiological benefits to it, but for me, like, that's secondary and tertiary. For me, a big priority for me is to make sure I don't start the day off with something that applies any sort of, hey, you got to get this done. You got to do this. Don't forget this. And I'm like, okay, I'm productive. I'm intelligent. I'll get all these sort of things done. But what if I don't take that moment in the morning to go, all right, ground your feet. Literally, I'll walk around my backyard barefoot. Like, I'll do something to just get me in the now. And start thinking about, okay, I don't need to accomplish a ton of things today, but this is what I want to get done, and I make it reasonable. And so I drink the same drink every morning that I make. It's very specific for very specific reasons. I eat the exact same snack every morning for very specific reasons, and I eat the same breakfast every morning, give or take, depending on my workload's going to be.
Yeah.
I shift my meals. So my morning routine lasts till about 10:30, and I get up about 7:30.
Can you quickly walk us through the drink, the snack, and the breakfast?
Yep. So first thing I get, like I said, I have 2 cats. They're my service animals. I never in a million years thought I would ever be
Is that an emotional support pussy you got there?
They both are. They both are. Yeah. So I get up, I spend a little bit of time with them, but the drink is this. I use there's a brand called Lumi, Lumi. Mm-hmm. I was introduced by this. It's basically what it is it's fresh pressed juices. It's cayenne. It's what else is in it? Lime. There's a couple different that Lumi makes. Mm-hmm. And it's got ginger in it. Again, I'm looking at something I want to start the morning off with the best possible, to my knowledge, and to people way smarter than me in the dietetics world, saying, hey, if you're going to start your morning off with water, fat, carbs, sugar, protein, whatever, let's structure it in this way. And I'm fortunate I've got some friends of mine that are legitimately the best dietitians on the planet.
Yeah.
Louise Burke at the Australian Institute of Sport. Rob Skinner would be a great person. He was the command, and he was a dietitian there. Now he's the head dietitian at the Olympic Training Center.
Yeah.
And talking with those guys, so I use the Lumi. I actually, believe it or not, I used to use greens. I use Mitch's greens. I truly do.
Green.
Every morning I use the greens.
Can I take 1 second to just say, in just having a sip of that, I feel like I've got to lick my own ass to get that taste
flavor
out of my mouth.
So if you add cayenne, turmeric, and ginger to it, and lime juice, it doesn't taste like you gotta you ate the lawnmower.
Yeah.
But that's and that's the thing. Is like, well, why would I ever buy that product? Well, that's the downside of eating really good greens is they don't taste very good, especially some of the other spirulina is just terrible. Yeah. So tasting, not for you, but so I use Strike Force. I use that Lumi. And then I add a citrus emergency, and then I also add. I don't add it to the drink. There's a peanut butter product that's called Nakee Butter, Nakee. It was introduced by a friend of mine who plays for the Bills, and it's an MCT infused cocoa and peanut. It comes in these little packets. You need it in your hand, boom. So I wake up, I've got my fat, I've got my protein, I've got 32 ounces of water, and then that's my morning drink.
Yeah.
And I meditate and I pray and I do certain things, kind of what the day feels, but it's somewhere in that world. And then I take usually at about 9:30, six eggs, 3 pieces of bacon, half an avocado. And if I'm going to do my swim that morning, I swim about 12 to 15 hours a week in the morning. And if I'm going to put in the miles in the pool, I'll add about 6 ounces of shredded white potatoes.
Yeah.
That's every morning. That's my breakfast, even on the road. So I hit IHOP on the way here, and that's what I ate.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
So I take that because I want to take something that can be reproducible.
Yeah.
And take little pieces of it with me on the road because it gives me that sense of home.
Yeah, and stability and
it takes my anxiety way down.
Yeah. So all right, so you got the drink, and then is there a snack and a breakfast, or that's the same?
Well, the
thing?
peanut butter is the snack because I take that it's the high protein, high fat.
Yeah.
It satiates me because I'm not a big. I can if I need to, and on the road it's fine. Like I can get up and have a fairly good sized breakfast, whereas I used to never be able to do that.
Yeah.
But what I do is I break that fast. So the breakfast, I break that fast by I rehydrate and I get my fat and protein. Just that initial to satiate me, so I'm not sitting there going, "Oh, I'm so hungry," and then I don't feel like eating.
Yeah.
Then I eat. Then I have my eggs, and that's how my morning usually goes.
Do you break it down? I mean, obviously at IHOP, who fucking knows where they source it? But I mean, are you doing free range eggs and
every
bacon?
piece of food that goes in my body is either free range or organic.
Yeah.
And same with my son. And so I've been I'm so fortunate and lucky to be in the world that I work in, and I've had some really awesome teachers reach out to me and go, "Hey, I see you're following this meal plan." A guy named Stan Efferding, who is by all accounts one of the smartest and strongest humans on the planet, right? Mm-hmm. His camp had reached out to me, and I'd been running his vertical diet for quite a while, and he's like, "Hey, take a look at this." And now they're prepackaged them, and that's what my lunch and dinners are usually those meals. And I've gotten myself, honestly, it's ironic that we mentioned this because I've gotten myself in such a routine that I have a bunch of free time now that I never used to really have. And so now I'm trying to fill that free time with productivity.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the key to fucking life is, well, 2 keys to me is purpose and efficiency. I mean,
right.
Because if you have neither, you're a fucking mess. And that makes a huge difference. We're going to get huge into the nutrition component across the board, but that's some fascinating shit and cool. I'm definitely going to be checking out those products. And for those listening, all the shit that we're going to talk about today, that gets recommended or what have you, we'll link it into either the show notes or when we put it out on social media, so that you can find where all the shit is. So you're not one of these assholes that's driving, trying to write on a fucking napkin,
yep.
That I see on fucking I-30 6 times a week. But anyway, good shit on the morning routine. Lots of good lessons there. One thing that you did mention that I just wanted to ask you real quick is walking barefoot on the grass. I've read and seen, some literature on like almost like an electrolysis or like a magnetic benefit to that. Like, do you subscribe to that?
I think it's probably going to be considered, most people call it grounding.
Yeah. So you subscribe to that?
Well, I'm not a big I can't substantiate it.
Yeah.
With my own personal sort of data that I can share.
Yeah.
And this is real, again, this is all a journey for me because 2 years ago, if we had this conversation, I would have just rolled my eyes and just totally disregarded that this was something that would be viable.
Yeah.
To do.
Yeah.
So I do it. I can't explain it, Mike. When I walk barefoot with purpose, it just keeps me in the now.
Yeah.
It really keeps me in the now, and it basically gives me a starting point to begin to organize my thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's what a routine is.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I certainly don't scoff at it. I mean, to me, it's one of those things that it's hard to know, like, is it quantifiably positive impact or not?
So I've seen it. You can measure. So if you're able to measure your heart rate variability, which there's only really one company that has a home take home device that can do that, called Omega Wave. I have seen a benefit of being stressed out, like for whatever, just general day stress. And I put this monitor on me. I do quick meditation, or I walk around outside, or even in this case, this was introduced to me by a really good friend and brilliant man named George Ryan. He's been at LA SWAT for 27-28 years. Brilliant human being. And he's just gotten to a point in his career, you know, doing that job, I think we either get to the point of getting a little bit more holistic, or we just fall off. Right. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I got, is he's like, hey, you should try this. You should try this. And I started thinking, like, man, I really trust this person. I really do. Yeah. And so I started going, all right, well, if you trust him, you should probably listen a little bit more. Yeah. And I started doing some of those things from that world that I never subscribed to. And at the very least, it's given me a sense of, I could say I was a control freak. This is a way that I can gain control without being like looming or overpowering over my own personality.
Yeah. Without having to punch somebody in the throat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good shit. Yeah. Like I said, you know, we're going to talk about a little bit of the Navy career, just because you've done some pretty remarkable shit and it's fascinating. And I know people want to hear it. And then we'll get back into the exercise science and all that stuff. But one thing that we share as a common ancestry, which I find unique because of how rare it is in our community, is that we both grew up in fucking Iowa.
Right.
It's pretty awesome. Fucking corn.
Not too far from each other.
Yeah. So, you know, I have written down growing up in childhood. If you could just kind of walk us through a little bit of what that was like, synopsize it.
Yeah, I grew up in the Partridge family. Truly, my father passed a couple years ago, but I have and had the greatest mom and dad that were so supportive. I wasn't raised poor, but I wasn't raised with really any money. We got everything we needed: food, clothing. You know. I had an amazing childhood, growing up on a dirt road, and this kind of reminds me of that neighborhood where I grew up on. Yeah. And even today, when I go home back to Iowa, to those places, it's just a good place for me to recharge. I can't say they're super long. Like, I get along with my family great, but it's just not mine anymore. I want to still there's something to be said, as you know, go home, get home, wherever your bed is. Yeah. And Virginia is my current home. So
there's an element, I know when I go back to Iowa, that there is that element of home that still feels like I'm the same way, and that, like, I don't want to spend 6 fucking months there, but for that couple of days, there's like kind of a relinquishment of stress, and
there is.
You know, it's interesting, you know, hearing, because my family was the same way. I mean, I mentioned this in my Q&A podcast here last week, a couple weeks ago. My parents listened to it. Shout out George and Sandy. But you know that I referenced it was like Leave It to Beaver, like same kind of thing.
Sure.
It's just like this. It's like a TV family almost. You know, no dysfunction. Like, best parents ever. Like, you know, supportive. You know, all four. I've got 2 older brothers and a younger sister, and just, I mean, they supported every fucking thing we did. You know, I mean, they were smart about it in terms of offering advice and be like, well, there's probably a better way to do this, or have you thought about that, or whatever. But no compulsion or pressure to, motherfucker, you're going to go to college, or, you know, if you don't have if you don't get that grade above 79, motherfucker, you know, there was none of that. Like, I mean, they didn't put up with any shit. You know, they weren't pushovers, but they
didn't have to, though.
Yeah,
they just created an environment where you're like, oh, it's way more conducive for me to just be a good son, or be a good brother, or be a good, and we still, like, you were probably like me. Like, I was still, like, my idea of when I got bored, I'd go to my parents as every other kid does. I'm so bored. My mom and dad, they did this a couple times. They didn't do this all the time, and I wasn't surprised every time. But the first couple times, I remember as a kid doing it. I was like 10, 12 years old, and my mom just like walked away from me. And I just remember going, my mom has never just walked away from me. Well, she came back with like a bathroom cleaning bucket that she would put water in and scrub the floor with. Well, the bucket was full of soap and toilet paper and shaving cream. And I'm like, and it was nighttime, mind you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what is this supposed to be? And she goes, go make yourself useful and go TP the neighbor's house. That's what that was my parents. You know, I've got a real short, funny story to this is my father. Like, my father passed, but he was drafted in Vietnam. He went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Yeah. He's from Anita, Iowa, very small town, central Iowa, or actually really western Iowa. But his best friend picked him up at the Greyhound bus stop, and a very small town, very, very small town, much smaller, like where I grew up, like less than 100 people, small town. Yeah. But there was the police chief would always like kind of how he'd be asleep with his feet up on the desk, cowboy boots, and it was the middle of winter, and he had his feet up on the stove. Well, the actual burner was in the basement, so there's no like logs. It was just heated through my best friend picked him up at the Greyhound bus stop, and he's like, "Hey, Bill," he's like, "You got that half stick of dynamite still?" And he's like, "The hell do I need a half stick of dynamite for?" He's like, "Oh, I bet I forget my dad." Well, my dad likes somebody. He referred to them as an old boy.
Yeah.
Was that old boy sheriff working right now, or whatever? And he's like, "Yeah, he's probably asleep." So my dad climbed the fire escape with a stick of dynamite. He dropped it down the flute,
Jesus
unlit. It blew up the boiler.
Holy fuck!
So my dad spent his entire leave time, 3 days before shipping to Vietnam, hiding in his friend's head in the barn. When my dad showed up at the Greyhound bus stop, the sheriff was sitting there.
Holy fuck!
And he's like, he was on the bus. And he's like, "Where are you going, Nichols?" And he's like, "Vietnam." And he's like, "All right." That was it. Can you imagine doing that these days?
Oh, fucking Christ.
That was my dad.
Yeah.
And he was the homecoming king. He was the football captain. He was a track captain. And he just the funniest guy ever. Yeah. And that's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me.
So the apple hit the fucking trunk and rolled way the fuck away.
Hit the body, but not the brain was totally different.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of parallels in, growing up in Iowa in the 80s. I think there's a lot of consistencies with kids' childhoods very similarly to ours.
Right.
And you said, I think you said you had a sister, right?
I do. She's 2 years older than me.
2 years older.
Yeah.
What?
She's awesome. Yeah, she's the same thing. Like she was all state in 3 sports, valedictorian, she was National Honor Society, and then she graduated summa cum laude from Iowa with a degree, a couple of degrees. She got her master's now, and she's an executive in Whirlpool. So living the life.
Fucking A. She can hook up a Whirlpool down here probably, huh?
If you want.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it offline. If you want one, let me know.
Yeah.
But yes.
Fuck yeah, I'll sit in the
because I'm not going to go like, if you email my sister,
here's
like
her
everyone's going to be like,
Yeah.
Emailing her for free washer and dry.
Give me the bro deal.
Yeah.
What sports did you play growing up? Did you swim?
Yeah, I swam. The first sport I ever, organized sport I ever played was T-ball and swimming, same year. I started swimming competitively when I was 4.
Dude, same here, man. That's a trip.
Yeah,
like
so that's what I spent a lot of time in. I guarantee you swimming. I swam in Waterloo probably. And swim meets all the time.
Muscatine, what was the USS team called there in Muscatine?
We were the Muskies, and then we were the Dolphins, or the Marlins.
Yeah.
So I swam on both those club teams.
I swam for the Waterloo Sharks. Yes. Some serious originality.
Yeah, nice. Yep.
But yeah, USS clubs growing up, we probably fucking swam. How old are you?
I'm 40.
Yeah, fuck, so am I, dude. Like, I guarantee
we swam against each other. Yeah, that's badass.
That's a fucking trip, man.
I swam competitively from 4 to 18.
Yeah, same.
I swam every weekend except for during baseball season.
Yeah, that's a fucking trip, man. What are the odds? Good shit.
Well, there's only 7 million people in Iowa.
Yeah,
so.
no shit. Yeah, they're pretty good odds. Yeah. And there isn't jack shit to do there either. But did you ever wrestle?
I did. I played multiple sports all the way up until my junior of high school. And then my junior of high school, the only thing I did was play baseball my junior, senior year.
Yeah.
That was I had every intent in playing professional baseball. I had a couple opportunities to do so, played college baseball, had a great time. And then it just, looking back at it, it's not a big surprise of how I developed physically because I just did everything.
Yeah.
And I did so many things. Like just even when I wasn't playing sports, I was climbing trees and my parents lived near a river. I was jumping off the train bridge into the river and all sorts of stuff. You do what an Iowa kid does with nothing else better to do than break shit, set stuff on fire, take it apart, and get in trouble.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. So you had scholarships in baseball?
I did, yeah. Yep, I did.
So transitioning into what was the inspiration to serve? Like what made you decide, fuck baseball and the scholarships, I'm going to join the Navy? And did you join?
Well, yeah, so it was actually, I graduated in college, went into grad school. I was a strength coach at Troy University. And
is that where you went to college?
I did, yep. So I did junior college in Iowa, Indian Hills.
Yeah.
Right? So the one in Centerville, not the one in Tumwa.
Yeah.
But it's the same university, just different campus. But anyway, and then I took a year off of school. I originally was going to go to the Tennessee. Mm-hmm. That's where I want to play baseball. It didn't work out. I walked on at Troy, ended up getting a scholarship and stayed there. And it was a good time. Baseball for me and sport for me, it wasn't so much about just like staying out of trouble in that sense. It certainly did that.
Yeah.
It kept me out of trouble, but for me, I was a very, very small child. Like my junior year of high school, or my sophomore year last year, I wrestled. Junior year of high school, I wrestled 103 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, I was a very, very small child, and I had my dad was a big guy. My mom was super athletic as well. My sister, like I said, she was all state and multiple. I was just this little runt.
Yeah.
And so I ended up. That's where I believe where my veracity came from, my willingness to just put myself into situations that were difficult, because it was self-validating for me. Mm-hmm. And after I graduated my undergrad, I stayed on as a strength coach and I didn't finish my grad school there, but I stayed on there as a strength coach for a while. And the decision that I made was, it was one of those things where it was like, well, if I don't get a chance to play professional baseball, which I did have a chance, a free agent contract by the Braves and by the Angels. And I was like, it was kind of like a punch. Well, if I don't make pro baseball, I'll go be a SEAL kind of thing. It was like, well, that's the incentive, become a professional baseball player, because being a SEAL sounds terribly difficult. So, well, that's exactly what happened. I was in grad school, and I was in a sports law class in the athletic building when the planes hit the tower. Yeah. By that point, I was already in DEP. I was already in the delayed entry program by about 4 months. And so that path was set. And there was no point in my life where I was like, ugh, I don't know. I was like, I want a part of this. Yeah. And it worked out really good, because a lot of the guys, as you know, like that were in the teams then, they just sat there, unfortunately, for like 6 months, 7 months going, mm-hmm. When are we going to do this? When are we going to do this? We had a very small East Coast contingent went to Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And then an even smaller East Coast contingent went. So when I did my first deployment in 2003, it was like I had missed a lot of those growing pains. Mm-hmm. And man, my timing was good.
Yeah. Well, because it's funny you mentioned that's exactly where I was. I had already done a deployment, and it was during the Force 21 reorganization thing. So at SEAL Team 3, it was kind of like professional development, sort of, but it was like a year, because of the scheduling changes. Like when we got back from a deployment in February of 2001 and weren't starting our next workup as an entire team to start that new rotation until January of 2002. Mm-hmm. And so, because of that, it was like, I did a season on the CSCS team, the Navy pentathlon team, because there was nothing else to do. Right. It was like, well, you can go to hazmat and fucking load planner. I was like, are you fucking like, I can't get sniper or free fall? Nope. Yep. No. So you can go learn how to fucking store batteries if you want, So I did a season on the CSCS team.
Stickles in the refrigerator? Yeah, the folks don't put batteries in the refrigerator. That doesn't work.
Just put them in the drain with the motor oil. But yeah, so I was in that same boat. We did an exercise to Jordan right after 9/11 that was a little more serious now because of it. But and then I joined the platoon. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned, because my timing. I was in 96 to 08, which was a good time to be in, but and gave me kind of a neat perspective in terms of a full enlistment under Clinton. And then all of Bush's time in too, so it was kind of a neat mix of everything. Right. But I didn't mean to hijack your story.
No. No, I just, it's interesting because we purposely didn't reminisce off camera. Yeah. Knowing that we realized that we knew each other, just because you put me through SQT. Yeah. So it's interesting because the community is small, but you don't realize how much interaction you do with people that you may never really even in the community get to know until later on. Yeah. Right. It's really interesting. And kind of the obvious thing is like BUDS instructors, guys that put you through, and then you end up doing a platoon with them. Yeah. I've had some just really odd situations where guys have gotten out of the Navy or had gotten in trouble. Not that I'm oblivious to that, believe me, and then had to, they kind of their life gets paused. They leave the squadron or the team and they come back and you're like, oh, you're the E5. You just surpassed somebody that was your senior. Yeah. That's a very interesting situation to be in. Cause like as a new guy, I'm being told to do what, and then when I got to the command in Virginia Beach, cause I got there so quick, some of those guys that put me through training, I was senior to them. Yeah. That's a very strange position to be in, especially because I was only at the time, I turned 23 during pool comp. Yeah. And so I was in the team's 24, and then I was over in Virginia Beach by 28. Yeah. Man. So so I got pulled out of SQT early. Yeah. because we were Team 5. Remember do the reorg, right?
Yeah.
So Team 5 got consolidated to go out there with Team 3 to do PSD.
Yeah.
So I got pulled out of Kodiak.
Oh, okay.
And they took us to Fallon, and that's when, I don't know if you recall, Senior Chief Fitzhenry was killed. A Humvee rollover.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's been a while, I know. But so then, because SEAL Team 5 was basically in their leave, I did a workup. I left Fallon after I did Tier 1. So I came back from Kodiak. I did Tier 1. So this just gives you an idea how fast my career started. I got pulled out of SQT early, went to Tier 1 in Fallon, Nevada, did that drive. We drove back to San Diego that day, the 5 of us. We got on a plane. We flew to Mount, to Louisville, right?
Yeah.
Flew to Louisville. No, we flew to Memphis to go to Shaw's.
Okay. Yeah, for those listening, Mount, it's like military operations, urban terrain, like urban assault training.
Right, buildings and, or clearing buildings from the street and, Humvees and such. So we went to Shaw's to shoot. I was with SEAL Team 7, did that for 2 weeks. Then the 5 of us, we drove to Louisville for the Mount training.
Yeah.
And then from that Mount training, 2 weeks later, I deployed.
Oh, shit.
So,
Jesus.
And then after that deployment, they reconsolidated something again to where, because SEAL Team 3, my first deployment basically had the con, like the CO of Team 3 was in charge. Well, after that deployment, that workup, they kind of reorged again, and they basically made like super platoons kind of, and that's where they pushed us to Ramadi, and we got split up. But
was your first deployment to Iraq?
It was, yeah. PSD for the Prime Minister, Joffrey. I was a driver for a couple months, and then I was in the Philippines, that back end of that deployment, because it was a 7.5 month deployment, and then we ripped halfway through Baghdad on January 3rd. We went to Guam, and then into the Philippines.
That's a hell of a transition.
So the crazy thing is, so we were in Iraq in the heat of that time, and they flew us to Diego Garcia to refuel. Have you ever been to It's the most beautiful island I've ever seen. And we're the plane broke. I just remember on New Year's Day, the day after, I'm sitting on this beach, and I was 24 hours ago, I was in a war zone, and I'm on the most beautiful beach in the world. Very strange. So Then I went to Philippines, which is equally beautiful. Got back from that deployment, and sent me to sniper school and a bunch of things real quickly. And like I said, they reorganized it, so they condensed that workup by about 4 more months.
Yeah.
So we deployed right away. It wasn't an 18-month turnaround. It was close to 7.
Yeah.
And then 16 days after that deployment, I was in selection.
God.
So I was just
fucking.
And then 6 months, or not even 5 months later, I was on my first deployment there.
Yeah.
So it was quick.
Yeah. Fucking Christ, that's a fast turnaround. So the first deployment was to Iraq. The second one
Iraq
was Iraq again. Anything of note? Obviously, they did the PSD thing. Anything else?
That was kind of it was odd being a babysitter for grown men in a combat zone. It's very strange. It was just it's like this real sexy picture that has no depth. That's what PSD is.
It's like social media.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's not got no clout. My second deployment was, I spent the entire time in Ramadi, sniper overwatch. We replaced SEAL Team 3, Jocko's group.
Oh, okay.
So
fucking busy time.
It was for being at SEAL Team 5 or one of the white side teams, we'll call it that, or what do you want to call it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Timing was awesome.
Yeah.
Especially just coming out of sniper school and getting they basically were just go to work.
Yeah.
And the leadership and the head shed of my immediate platoon and the task unit was awesome.
Yeah.
Super awesome.
Fuck, that's awesome.
So I have no complaints. Yeah. I don't.
So that was the gist of that deployment, was in the fucking triangle.
Yep.
In Ramadi doing sniper overwatch.
Did it all the time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good times.
Yeah. So, all right. So you screen, you go to DEVGROUP. There's a bunch of shit you can't talk about on there, I know, but one thing that we did discuss that I'd love if you could shed a little bit of insight and anything else like it. But you did a shit ton of deployments there, and that's obviously kicking it up a notch, operational tempo and kind of the benchmark. For those people listening, kind of that's one of the more common questions I and we as community members get asked is, what's the difference between the regular SEAL teams and DEVGROUP? And to me, the gist of it is that the starting point is much higher. You're not having to come back to guys fresh out of bud. You're dealing with guys that are, have way more experience, much better budget, staying together longer, tighter group.
I think that's the point worth highlighting. Not to get, this won't give any like highlights or specifics. I think that's where I very much like to protect the anonymity of some of those inner workings, and I know you very much respect that, and so like. That's one of the things that is so uniquely amazing about some of those tier 1 units is that when you get there, if you do the right thing and follow the rules and do a good job and all those sort of things, it's very likely for at least a 6-year window, unless you make rank super fast or something, you show up to command as a chief, it kind of changes some things, but keeping guys together for 4 and 5 years where you really learn to read body language in the dark of somebody you're super familiar with. And so much so when things are out of the normal, you can see it. Like they go into a shrug and you're like, okay, that guy's stressed out. Like there's these inherent reflexes that we have that we notice just through body language. Yeah. And that was a place that was super cool because I felt like there is so much to learn in our skill and our craft with as a SEAL. There's so much like and it's cool because you can kind of focus like, well, I really want to get into sniping. I really want to get into breaching. I really wanted to get into maybe skydiving or whatever, dog handling, all these really cool little niches you can be really gain a ton of information and become a real subject matter expert. That's why I was so drawn to that place, because I've really got an opportunity to become an expert, not because I'm special, but because here's the big difference above all else is the leadership. Not that there's, let me be, here's my public service announcement, be super clear. Yeah. I am not talking poorly about any SEAL. I'm not negatively no negative speak about the white side, nothing. I'm just saying that based on the infrastructure that the command dev group has, they get to stay together for a long, long time. Yeah. A lot of times compared to the other piece. Yeah. And there's something, look at pro sports.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a very common thread. So if you're like, and it's not that the other teams aren't pro type caliber, that's not at all, because the competency is there. It's just that this command exists and it's very difficult. Like maybe one of the biggest deterrents for people going there is that when you get to the community, you become a knowledgeable SEAL and you're going like, man, do I really want to put my life on hold or maybe even relocate across the country? Mm-hmm. It's a big decision to make. Yeah. So, and I understand why people will, and also San Diego geographically is probably a little bit more attractive than Virginia Beach as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of ins and outs of it, no doubt. I mean, the thing that I always, could appreciate was exactly what you're talking about. Is just, the ability to stay together and have that intimacy that, without that super high turnover rate that you have. And whether it's the shooters, whether it's the dog guys, whatever, is that there's an ability to stick together longer with better resources, and that makes a huge.
And it really is that simple. Like, I mean, it's simple in the sense of like, okay, list items that differentiates the two. Yeah, it's simple in listing, but not simple in context, because there's so much. Right, as the name is, development. There's a ton of development that they've allotted. Like, hey, we're going to really set time aside and you're going to go through these training. Whereas like you saw as a story, and I think that's where the relevance is you see the story I told about, it was like a whirlwind through the teams and 2 deployments. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of continuity not because the teams didn't want it, I think, but just because of the nature of, the timeline. Everyone was everywhere. Yeah. Like there wasn't really any PACOM deployments. There was, but everybody at the time when I was in San Diego, all the teams, they knew where they're going. You're going to war. You're going to combat. Yeah. So it was this really cool utopian time, I think, where now certain, like, it's competition and guys are trying to get to the best place. Like I want to go to Ramadi and I don't want to go to here or whatever it may be. But I was extraordinarily fortunate.
Yeah. No, I mean, the timeline that you were in is pretty awesome. And one of the things that, for you guys listening, the way that when he first came in, we were like, fuck, where do I know you from? And to have been, an SQT or SEAL qualification training instructor. I was not there very long because I got valley fever and then went over to Bud's after I lost.
I remember that. I remember you getting, now that you say, I totally remember you getting sick.
Yeah. It was probably with your class out at Nyland. I think.
Yes. Yep.
We were shooting fucking Carl Gustav rockets, and I was a range safety officer for shooting like 50 of them. And so my chest was really tight the next day, which it normally is, when you're around, shooting a lot of those and whatever. And, but it just got worse and worse. And so finally they were like, dude, something's fucked up, go to Balboa. And I did, and spent a day and a half in the emergency room there. And then they, ran every fucking test they could. And they're like, oh, you tested positive for coccidiomycosis. I was like, the fuck is that? So yeah, I mean, that completely pivoted and altered my entire life path. But my point is that, I was in the instructor cadre when you came through SQT, and I couldn't put my finger on where we knew each other from, but we figured that out when he walked in. So
you busted out the Sailor of the Quarter photo.
Yeah.
I was like, I totally remember that guy.
Where I look like I'm fucking 12 years old.
That's why I don't shave.
Yeah.
It's the red hair, man. I look like I'm 15.
Yeah. Yep. So I guess, going back to your time there, I know, again, a lot of it you can't get into real heavy, but the USS Alabama, the
Maersk Alabama.
What can you share about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was what I'm willing to talk about is just, it was really, really cool to be a part of something that was able to relocate itself so very quickly, efficiently, and effectively.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was just like, we're going to do what? We're going to get this and take all this shit over there and going to go do this. And I had already been at the command for, at that point, I'd already been there for a year, and I'd seen some of the fast paced sort of decisions, but I'd never seen this for real. We'd trained it and we'd practiced it a lot because that was like why the command exists. It's, we were specifically targeting people in the ocean that are being assholes, So it was one of those things that was a perfect storm because, basically what we heard is like the people in the White House and the Pentagon, all those people are like, well, this is why this command exists. Don't fuck this up. Yeah. And so there was this really cool sort of, all right, guys, like we know shit, know what the fuck we're doing. Yeah. Like, don't act like an asshole. Get everything ready. And it was really cool because you get to see it, and then you see the mission go down, you see it happen, and then you see the after effect of what it meant to this man. Mm-hmm. Being able to meet him and get a talk with him, as limited as we did, like he had seen some shit. Yeah. And he had the first time we saw him, he was pretty glossed over, but then we finally, he had asked if he could come address us and talk to us and thank us. And it was really, really cool getting to really see, I was a part of something that this man, this family, the people associated with this country can be proud of. Yeah. And that for me, and I think that's what a lot of times in military service, we kind of go, well, I'm really thankful. I'm really happy. I'm proud of what I did. And it's kind of, you don't see the human effect like you do of your own countrymen, sure. Right? How many U.S. servicemen have got to rescue an American in an austere environment and then get to talk to him or her? Yeah. It's not very common, except for maybe a couple people, right? Yeah. Yeah. And getting to do that for me was, it makes me really appreciate what our community does. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, that is like the textbook example of why the SEAL teams exist, especially the tier 1 aspect.
Exactly. It was cool.
It's like fucking textbook, so, yep. And to me, the fascinating thing, that impressed me, even having come from the community, was just when you think about, the logistics, the training, the level of competency that the collective group had to have had to pull that fucking mission off the way that they did is truly astounding. Yeah. I think. I mean, like, for those of you that aren't that familiar, I mean, have you seen the movie?
I haven't, no.
Watch the movie, like read up on the story, but can you walk us through a little bit of the timeline in terms of how it went down or?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about it was, it's, I guess timeline, I guess we'll start there, is the amount of backward math that they had to do to get us there on their timeline in the air, to me was, and that's kind of, you mentioned that. I remember flying there. It was a direct flight. They refueled us. And I remember asking my master chief, I was like, hey, because some of the things in the boat, like they're going to have to sink, like parachutes, and like, what are we going to do with these? Like we already knew what we were going to do with them. Like, cause it was already pre-briefed. And I just looked at him, I go, how much money are we sinking on this one? And he's like, I don't know, do the math. And I was like, he's like, yeah, do the math. I was like, just to really keep me busy, really, probably. But, as far as the timeline is concerned and certain other highlighting aspects of the mission, I think that, it's, you want people to be, I really want people to know more about it and those sort of things and see how it happens, because there's the conundrum. It's like, we really want to talk positive. I really want to talk positive about the community to get great, because it's so full of great people, I wish I guess probably I wish there was more to do. Yeah. There's one guy, it was like, I think a lot of us were just kind of out of a job, really, at the end of the day. We all show up and we're like, okay, we can't all do this. Like, all right. So
not enough work to go
there was a process in which that was picked or whatever. But, I think that, like, I guess, from a mission standpoint, that's already been told. But I think one of the interesting things that happened on that was, when we got to that boat, when we jumped in and we got physically on the large naval vessel that we were on, the people on that ship didn't even know we were coming. No shit. Except for the people that needed to know, like the 06, the 07, and the battle fleet. Like, no, like, we showed up on this thing. I remember walking into the cafeteria, the galley, for you Navy folk, and I had, much longer hair and a beard than I did now. I had a cut-off T-shirt, and I had a pair of, like, I think I had a pair of green camouflage AOR2, like, pajama pants on, basically. That was my military uniform. And I remember walking into the cafeteria, like, in line, because they were walking us to the berthing that they had, like, kicked a bunch of E5 Marines that were not happy we were there out of their space. And I remember this like, E2, E3, just like, we're walking through and we're all soaking wet. We just got out of the ocean, and we're like sloshing through, and they were cleaning, and he got so mad he didn't even look who it was. They just heard wet feet. Yeah. And he was standing in like the P-way, like in the doorway, and he didn't even look. He just saw my friend. I walked past him, and he heard me, and he goes, wham, he hit my buddy right in the chest. And he looked at him, he just goes, oh, fuck. And he's like, who are you? And I remember him, I looked back, because I heard a thud. And I looked at the guy, and I looked at him, and he goes, who the fuck are you guys? That's what he said. And then someone else, they were like, there was these two little, like, the cafeteria was long, it was kind of L-shaped, and this was like E5 and E6 could only eat back here. And there's a bunch of E5s back there, E6s in there. I just remember hearing going, who the fuck are those guys? Yeah. Where the fuck did they come from? All this stuff. And I just, it didn't dawn on me that they shouldn't know. You don't want them to know. That's the first time in a global mission that I realized how tight-lipped it needed to be. Yeah. And that, from a maturity standpoint, was, well, it should have been a lesson learned, but it wasn't the best. Yeah. It just made me more arrogant, honestly. Yeah. It did.
I mean, the way you get treated on ships and in exchanges, and being on base, being part of that unit is a double-edged sword a little bit.
It is. It gets, because it's like, you want to be able to. I remember wanting to explain to a certain degree who we were when we got working with different foreign units and U.S. units, and just to go, all right, well, we're working with them. Shouldn't they kind of know? Like, yeah. And there wasn't a lot of conversation about that either. And I get that, but I think that was just more of like. It was just me just trying to be friendly, I suppose, probably, than anything useful. Yeah. But
that's good shit. So, all right. So you about fucking hand this E5 his ass for slapping somebody in the chest. And then, what, if you could just, share kind of the general synopsis of how everything went down of what you can. I know a lot.
Yeah, no, I know. And I think that it was a very interesting thing, because, first you got to identify who's gonna take the shots and so forth, and that was decided. And then it was, well, there was 2 ships, right? We were housed on one, and then the boat, the rescue boat was being towed by the Boxer. No, the Bainbridge. That's what it was. The Bainbridge, I think, was towing it. And, that was, it was planned. It was, the timeline was planned for various reasons. And I think what it kind of got to the crunch time, as far as I understand it, this is an interesting aspect where you don't look at the leadership side of it and decisions to be made. It's like, okay, well, as far as I remember, there was discussion between the people holding captain captive. Was, there was no fuel, they had no food, their batteries had died on their radios, and so it became this critical point of miscommunication, which is where it became, hey, we got to shit or get off the pot. Because if you think about like human behavior in a stressful environment, right? We do certain things, we behave a certain way, and it's like when you're in a combat environment, a lot of times, like, I'm the aggressor and I've got bad guys inside. If they happen to wake up and they want to be aggressive, they'll show their hand.
Yeah.
And that was where it was becoming a fearful thing, I think, because that's why it happened, when it happened, how it happened. Because it came to the point where it's like, well, we got to treat this like everything else. This has just become critical.
Yeah.
Like, we can't just keep sitting here and like buying time and just waiting and hope they give up.
Yeah.
And that was the mood that was felt. And then when the decision was made, it worked out great.
Yeah.
The right people were in the right place. If you hear the story from the person that took the shots or the people that did, it really even I look at it as a guy that I could have been the one, or could have been any one of the teams that did it. But I look at it and I go, well, that's the expectation. Yeah. And I think that was one of the really cool things about the finality of it was the guys that were involved, it was business as usual.
Yeah.
It really was. And I think that's what's really cool about the nature of that command is we practiced so much.
Yeah.
And that, as you said, money and resources is a big reason why we can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, for those of you that are, have your head completely buried in your ass on this, I mean, to me, that what's so impressive about it is, and you have to realize the difficulty. I mean, logistics and timing and resources and all that shit aside, which is impressive in its own right, but the actual physicality or the action rather of taking a shot from a ship onto another ship while both of them are moving, live targets, hostage situation, there's friendlies in there.
Yeah, the multiple targets create some real confusion, real problems.
With timing, having to shoot the guys at basically the exact same fucking time, knowing that there's a friendly on there intermixed. I mean, like, and
then again, it's like one of those things that, in sniper school, we learned that the bullet typically will go the path of least resistance. So if you're shooting from an elevated position and you're shooting down on a plain glass window, that bullet will right itself almost 90 degrees in trajectory as it goes through glass. Because I don't know why it does that, but the ballistic physics of it does. And so that was interesting. So you have a moving ship, an elevated ship shooting through plexiglass, which is even more different, or maybe it was glass. I'm not sure what it was, but it creates a scenario where, the shot on an open target in itself is difficult.
Yeah.
But what they had to deal with, it upped the ante a bit. But the result, like, here's the thing, and this is not a point of arrogance. It's really not, even like old, arrogant, ego-driven guy. But there was no surprise that they achieved what they set out to do. Yeah. There was no surprise.
Yeah. I mean, to me, just for them to set the bar that high and nail it like that was pretty fucking awesome. Because, cool. I mean, there's so many elements of that whole process that could have derailed the whole fucking thing, and the fact that it was pulled off the manner in which it was it was a proud day for America. I mean,
for sure.
For the community, for everything,
Yeah, and that's what I kind of mean, like being like in the front row, like part of I was just kind of like one of the band members, like the roadies. I wasn't, it was like being a part of it and going, man, because you part of you going, I could totally do that. I could have totally done it. And in my own right, I'm confident that I could have, but it wasn't my time. Yeah. It wasn't the job. I wasn't in a place and time in my career to get that opportunity. Yeah. But the person that did, the people that did,
Yeah, hats off to him, no doubt about it. It's fucking great.
Yep.
To me, so that's essentially a hostage rescue. It's one of the neat things about that command, that does a lot of those. And there was another one. Is that something you can talk about on here?
Well, the different hostage rescue?
Yeah. Can you go into that at all?
Well, I wasn't, the one that was in Afghanistan, I wasn't part of.
The Southcom one?
Oh, that's right. Oh, I was. Okay. That was my first mission to command. So yeah, that was, that was kind of a bit of a mood. When it all kind of materialized, it really was much ado about nothing. There was a couple Americans that had been held hostage by the FARC. I forget what that acronym stands for, but liberate something. Anyway, yeah. They had these, I believe there were 3 Americans, maybe it was 4. They had them in captivity for right at 5 years. The woman that was held captivity had, I forgive me if I'm misquoting whoever's listening. I believe that she had birthed a couple children and everything by her captors, and there was rumor that there was some potential disease that was involved, that their health had gotten to the point where they were not really of value to them, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's when we got called, essentially. And to be honest with you, I had no idea that these people weren't down there. Yeah. I really, and from my recollection, I don't know anybody that was in my immediate team or that we got people we've had people down there for, what the fuck are we keeping these?
Why are they still
wait
there?
a minute. This command's been here since the 80s. Why the fuck are they still down there? That's our whole mission set.
Yeah.
Well, as far as I understand, and again, there was something to do, because once we got down there, it was like, oh yeah, here they are.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when there was a handoff in a helicopter, because they're like, oh, because if these guys show up, because what we were doing, the United States was sending a lot of money down there year after year to help find these people.
Yeah.
Well, the fucked up thing was that we knew where they were. I say we, I don't mean to decisions were made that weren't mine, and I'm not trying to throw anyone on the bus. And it's just, I don't begin to try to understand the political landscape and why decisions are made. I just know that I was there. Yeah. And that was very strange to me, because that for me was like the same thing, this huge moving machine that was seamless. And then you get down there and they're like, they're not going to use us. They'd rather just give them up because they don't want the black eye, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know.
Have you ever watched the Netflix show Narcos?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to me, there's a lot of lessons to be learned, I think, in terms of counter narcotics and the politics involved in foreign policy and whatever. I mean, far above and beyond the scope of just drugs. It's a fascinating series.
It's a business. You got to understand.
Yeah. But to me, the political implications of the United States administrations, the DEA leadership, whoever's in charge in Colombia or whatever country, that they're dealing with at the time, depending on which unit they're trying to dismantle. But, I think there's a lot of good between the lines insight as to how fucking complex foreign policy can be. And to me, that's a textbook.
Yeah. And that was it being my first deployment there. Like I said, I'd done a deployment with, we were the dedicated mission to protect the prime minister and president of Iraq. And that was globally political. Yeah. But that system was already in place when we showed up. There had already been PSDs in place, but this was a first time I'd experienced it. And I witnessed a lot of frustration on the U.S. side. Yeah. Is what I saw. All of our leadership felt the same way. It's why? What is going on? Now, our leadership wasn't saying that vocally, because they were great leaders, and they're not gonna open their dirty laundry, command dirty laundry in front of the young guys or the guys in general. So I just know that there was some frustration.
Yeah. Is there any other operational stories that you can or would like to share from your time there? I know, again, I know listeners want to hear that shit.
Yeah, no, and with the reason why is you already know that just it's more for the public to. I very much appreciate the community I come from, and I'm not against telling the stories in that regard. But for me, I got to step myself back a little bit and go, the particulars, you would understand. You and I could talk all day about this, and you're going to totally understand, because I'm not going to have to change acronyms or vernacular or whatever it may be. But trying to get people the gist of what I went through, It's morbid. It's best housed in that environment where people can understand it, protect it. They can create buffers. And then, once for me, some of those particulars come out, it's like, I've got no personal buffer.
Yeah.
And, out of respect to the guys, it's like, as far as the missions are concerned in my time there is, what I can or will say, or I'm comfortable saying outside of particulars is I have never been in a place and I've spent a fair amount of time in sports as an athlete, but I've also spent even more time, it seems now, in the last couple of years with pro athletes working or something, some manner of it. And I can say that I know why there's such an interest into it, but what I can say is that, from my interpretation, the people there are so good at what they do. Mm-hmm. They really are. And now that's not to say that people don't get hurt, and that's the nature of our job. Guys get hurt. Unfortunately, some guys get killed. And I will say that command allowed me two things, but one really is worth talking about. One is it allowed me to develop my professional skill as a soldier better than anywhere else I could have ever done it. And I think that for me is why I can look back at my time and go, I don't have any regrets necessarily about my time in, because that command, the SEAL Team 5, the Department of the Navy, whatever you want to say, they afforded me so many great opportunities. And when I got to that command, it was everything I thought it would be.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Is like, now SEAL Team 5 was great. Don't get me wrong. What I thought a Navy SEAL should be doing, was going to be doing, the funding, that's what that place is. Yeah. It really, truly is. It is the stereo. It is what people think it is for the most part.
It's the brochure.
It is. It's the all-inclusive. Yeah.
It's the Sandals Soft Resort.
Yes.
Just because of my background and involvement canine-wise, is there any funny or interesting dog stories you can share while you were there? Jimmy Hatch, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm sure you've probably seen the picture of Spike. Oh, yeah.
That photo, I getting the story from Jimmy specifically on that photo for me and the dogs and a couple other guys that I know that were handlers and such. That's the first time I'd have been, because there were no dog handlers at Team 5. That program hadn't been matured yet.
Yeah.
And the dogs, I had seen the dogs do some things that really saved some dudes' lives, like really did. Will Chesney's dog got shot, I know, Cairo, and survived and healed and got back to the fight. With the dogs, as far as the dogs are concerned, I didn't realize because I didn't understand, I didn't realize how much value they brought.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it, but you didn't see it until you saw a dog handler like Jimmy Hatch or Will Chesney. There's a lot of the dog handlers are good. I don't want to say that, but that's why. Mm-hmm. I just, all I knew was a dog. Like dogs, they obey and do these sort of things, and you'd seen TVs and movies about SWAT dogs and such, but I'd never seen dogs do the things that they were able to do.
Yeah.
Jeff Still, I think he's running for office in Alabama. Mm-hmm. I remember in Arizona, we were skydiving. We were doing a nighttime hey-ho in Arizona, and they were developing, again, the dog program had developed, but the skydiving program hadn't. Like, they were sticking these dogs in kit bags and zipping them up, and like they were, there was a sew machine, obviously the drop zone, a couple of them there in Arizona, and Jimmy and Jeff, and they were always in there trying to fiddle. And I remember one of the very last night jumps, was it Jimmy? Well, anyway, we got to jump over the Grand Canyon. We're the first people to do a sunrise hey-ho over the Grand Canyon.
Oh, fucking shit.
Yeah, and we got to land in Grand Canyon National Park.
And you got no
beautiful
picture.
No, I filmed it.
Oh,
I was a jump master.
God, that's fucking awesome.
But so being the jump master, I was one of the last guys, the last guy out. So I just kind of I did my release, but the dog handlers are right with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fairly heavy. And with the dog, we paced each other perfect. We'd always just drive to the front because of our body weight. And I just remember under night vision, I looked over and I was like, whoa, it kind of startled me for a minute because he was close, close to me, but it was safe. We'd bunch up on purpose at night because you can see each other.
Yeah.
Well, it totally caught off guard because I looked over and I just saw a dog with goggles on and it had its muzzle. And so they had its own O2 that goes in the muzzle, and his dog was all kitted out. So Jimmy, once we did the delay, he'd unpack the chute, whatever, like he'd get under a canopy, and then you release and get the dog on more comfortable. He'd actually unzip the bag, and the dog was just hanging there, man, just like trying to fly. Dog had no idea it was 25,000 feet off the ground. Yeah, no. But that for me was like, these dogs are crazy like us.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of comfort in the fact that I knew that these dogs were as crazy as we were.
Yeah, no, that's no shit. I mean, I deal with their crazy all fucking day, every day. But yeah, no, it's a fucking great story. I love it. All right, so obviously, your naval career is remarkable. It's storied, and it lends so much credence and credibility to some of the practical applications of what you're doing now. Not that the education that you have in and of itself doesn't, but to me, I think what's really fucking cool about what you bring to the table, subject matter expertise wise, as it relates to physical conditioning and nutrition and training and recovery and things like that, is that to have spent, the years that you did at the commands that you were at doing the job that you're doing, I think it rounds out your perspective far better than any asshole that spent 19 years in college,
Right.
And even being a strength and conditioning coach for a football team or whatever, is that, the kind of the real-time feedback and the practical feedback that you get when you're around guys and yourself, being put in these positions where cortisol levels are about as high as they can possibly be. Stress is about as high as it can get.
For sure.
Lack of sleep and recovery is about as high as it can get, coupled with shitty fucking nutrition. I mean, like you're putting yourself and all these other super high level physical and mental capacity athletes, stacking the deck about as against as you can stack it to a human being, really.
For sure.
And so to me, like the amount of viable and pertinent and authentic fucking information that you can glean from that is fucking priceless, and I think it's brilliant that, that you've been able to combine those things and bring them into the light that you have. And so I want to spend, the second half of our talk talking about all that kind of shit. So if you could if you can talk about just kind of the transition from being in the Navy as you got out, what did that process look like?
Yeah, and actually, I guess I'll back up just a hair, because it's like that transition for me started while I was still in. Unfortunately, I was, when I was at the command, I was at the Human Performance Initiative, which is now called the POTIF, the Preservation of the Force, is what that program is called. And that program is developed to begin mitigating some of these, we'll call them epidemics, of non-combat related injuries.
Yeah.
Right. Like we the walking wounded constantly, just from, and that's the double-edged sword, is you have a demographic of humans that will endure. Well, they will endure a tremendous amount, especially when they're around one another.
Yeah. And
so now you have this interesting sort of mix of, like in college, for example, maybe this is a better example. Like in college, let's pick a big time college school. Doesn't matter which one it is, but pick your favorite big time college school. And there's some limitations that school can do, right? Based off of sports performance, because they're not going to, everyone's going to have to go through an IRB and not do human testing kind of protocols. But, in college, you look at a couple of variables. How much money do they have in resources? Right? What players have they recruited and are playing? And then what is the coaching staff? And then you have the ancillary stuff, like the nice weight room, the dietitians and stuff that not a lot of universities have. Well, my point is there's limitations based off especially money and people and knowledge. The SEAL community is not any of those.
Yeah.
It's never been shortage of information, knowledge, and money.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is that, okay, now you got to take this thing that's in its infancy that didn't exist and create it in an environment like the SEAL community that is well structured.
Yeah.
Human performance, or physiology or whatever it may be, it's a bit amoebus because everyone's a little bit different, and stimulus and then your state of readiness. Like, how much stress have you had? Like, what is your sleep patterns that you mentioned? What do those look like that will either improve your state of readiness or, make it worse? But that's the problem in the SEAL community. It's not a problem necessarily, but that's the double-edged sword, is that these guys will endure.
Yeah.
Even if they're broken.
Yeah.
And so for me, having a background in exercise science and being a strength coach and working with athletes before I even came in, it was a really, really cool opportunity for me to see that how different this can be from sport, but also be because there are less limitations as the way I see it. The people are more receptive to consume that information. And it's very similar in the police department and fire department too. Whereas that, let's just say the command I was at we were not underserviced.
Yeah.
But as far as the services that were provided at the time, they didn't exist. Mm-hmm. And so the military went through the process of hiring all these people. So getting to your question, I was working within the human performance program. I was the active duty representative for SOCOM and the command to be the conduit to say, hey, this is the devices we're thinking about testing, the footwear, the procedures, the float tanks, whatever it is. And I would make the communication with the guys and bring them in with the civilian population and help them resolve hopefully some of those issues. So now when I got out, because I had that experience, I had the experience of being a strength coach in college. I basically, right away, right when I got out, I went right back to working in the physical world, right? Coaching and consulting and advising, not even in the military really, some a little bit. And initially my schedule was fairly robust with professional athletes, teams and organizations, really looking at sleep and looking at stress management and looking at movement pattern issues and chronic stuff. Stuff that I gleaned from the military going, wait a minute, like we were having the same problems you guys were having. Okay, well, we began to resolve them. They began to maybe resolve them. And that's where that really good union happens of sports and the military is the military is not in the business of sharing. Mm-hmm. Neither is sport. Yeah. But when the military talks to sport, they share.
Yeah. Because there's no threat of...
Right. Like we would communicate with an NFL team or an NBA team on how they selected people or how they deselected people from a character standpoint, and they would do the same thing with us. Yeah. And that, for me, getting that insight on seeing how that worked was really cool. And now, that transition out, because of the opportunity that the command afforded me that last year in the Navy, year and a half, working within the human performance world, it made my transition super easy. It really did. As far as like going to work, getting back to work, that was easy.
Yeah, pretty smooth.
Literally the day after I got out of the Navy, the last day of September 2013, October 1st, I was in California working. The next morning I was on a flight working. Yeah. So it's kind of like I just didn't even have time I just went right to work. Yeah. And that a lot has changed since then, but that was my transition.
Yeah. So from like day one of getting out until current, have there been other certs or schools or things that you've either had to go through or wanted to go through or have gone through to help augment or?
Yeah. There are some professional certifications or professional courses I've done as far as like, increasing my knowledge on biomechanics, increasing my knowledge on the nervous system specifically. There are a lot of certifications you can get out there. Unfortunately, most of those certifications aren't recognized by any legitimate governing body. Yeah. Right. So the legitimate governing body here in the United States is the National Strength and Conditioning Association. They're the governing body for all sport. In the United States for all strength coaches, because they are the parochial nonprofit that sets curriculum. Yeah. And it's interesting because they're not a university, they have to accommodate everyone. So their curriculum is really, really, really good. It's as good as it's going to get in the United States. And so I've done a lot of work with them, teaching for them in the military. Like I've done a number of tactical strength conditioning conferences on behalf of this governing body for the Army, for the Air Force, for the Navy, for the Marine Corps, for private I've just been I've done it in Australia for a while. I'm not going to China. Sorry, Chinese folks. Last week got invited. I'm not interested. I'm just not with that much travel. So it's been, that transition for me feels like it's still happening because what I'm doing now is on paper, it looks pretty similar to that transition, but it's changed a bit.
Yeah. So does the CSCS and TSAC both come from?
They do. Yeah. The CSCS stands for Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. Yeah. You have to have your degree to take that test and get that certification, then you have to maintain it.
Does your degree have to be in?
It not anymore. It does not. Mine happens to be, my background is exercise science, and I also have a degree in chemistry.
Yeah.
My emphasis is sports performance, biomechanics, cardiac rehab, and organic chemistry, electron spectroscopy.
Me too.
Yeah, right? So all that means is if you set something on fire, through a spectrum of light will be emitted that tells you what that's made of.
Yeah.
That's what electron spectroscopy is. Super, it just allowed me to play with fire in chemistry.
Which is a good fit, right?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. So, in terms of for those, people listening, you mentioned there's a shit ton of certifications and whatever that don't mean anything. Like if somebody's out there trying to find somebody, and we'll get into resources towards the end, but are those two kind of the benchmark or gold standard of what you would want in somebody that...
Yeah, for me, like they're not limiting factors, because there are plenty of coaches out there that don't have those credentialings that certainly have the knowledge.
Yeah,
and a guy like Judd Logan, who's at Ashland, he's coached more Olympic medalists and himself and All-Americans, and I'm not even sure if he has a CSCS, but he's been a strength coach for 30 years. Like, does he need to go back and get it? No, but now that standardized sort of testing and sort of accreditation has now happened, it makes the most sense to go get the one that really doesn't cost a whole lot more than the cheap ones that don't give you anything.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that I always struggle with. People go, like, you're standing in a parking lot or a car dealership and you're looking at a Z06 Corvette or a Malibu. You have the money for the Z06, but you're like, I'm gonna get the Malibu. I'm not. I'm getting the Z06. Yeah. I don't want a Malibu. That's what my rental car is. I don't like Malibus. So, and that's and that's kind of the way I look at things. And I go, well, the exercise science, physics, chemistry. It's not that people aren't discovering new things about those fields. Mm-hmm. It's just that the many of things that get glossed over, or ignored, or unappreciated in the world, and really in any world that matter is, it's factual. Like we know from a standpoint of biomechanics what muscles do in this certain action and what we don't want to do. Like we shouldn't do certain things, and it's perpetuated that it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And I look at this and go, okay, and I get why. Like we live in a world by our own doing, where it's cliche this, it's swipe right this, it's Insta like, we have gotten so used to short term or short form communication being delivered as knowledge. Yeah. And, for a while I I battled that early on in my social media career, when I picked that up a couple of years ago. And now, it's just not a battle that I'm willing to fight. I just put out the information that I know it's factual, it's truthful, and I can substantiate what I say. I don't have to guess. I don't have to guess on percentages and exercises and what it's going to do. Yeah. Like we know what it's going to do. Yeah. And that for me is where I kind of stick my flag in the sand and go, hey, if you really want to know the truth about the things that I know that are true, mm-hmm. then listen to what I have to say. Yeah. And that's where I kind of probably rub people the wrong way too, because I'm not, I don't have to straddle a fence when it comes to physiology. Mm-hmm. I know what this does, and by doing this movement with this weight at this velocity, it's going to elicit this adaptation. Yeah. We know that factually. Mm-hmm. And so we just got to stop perpetuating this, you just can get sweaty and do things. And now don't get me wrong. Not everybody wants to take this as seriously as I do. Sure. And I understand that. But for example, I'll give you an example and we'll just leave it at that, because this is an example that everyone can relate to.
We're about to talk about CrossFit.
No, we're going to talk about sit-ups.
Yeah.
Okay. So is anybody here raise their hand? You guys go ahead and call in. It's live right now. Go ahead and call in if you have the answer. So sit-ups were a test that the United States military instituted because, during the draft of World War I, there weren't enough able-bodied men in the United States, right? So the president established the presidential fitness standard that was then being implemented in the school systems. So you see all those badass black and white photos of our kids like swinging from the monkey bars 75 feet off the ground over jagged glass, like back in the day. Camp. You know what I mean? Yeah. That was old gym class, right? But so it was became this policy of we got to get people, the next generation, if there's going to be a war, we got to get them in shape. But we can't draft 200,000 people and all put them on a track and have them run and test them. So we have to develop a test that deselects. These people can run, or they have the capacity to run. That's what the sit-up test. The sit-up tests the capacity for running endurance. It's a hip flexor and iliacus. It's not an ab. So if you're doing sit-ups to improve your abs, you're just going to create a lot of back pain. So you're going to create a hernia. You have a potential of creating a herniation because if you think about this, like anybody that's seated all day, or even like we'll sit here for 2 hours, you stand up, it's like, oh, it's stiff. We're under the impression that it's our back. It's not our back. It's not stiff necessarily. It's the iliacus and psoas that attaches to your spine, your L4, L5. It pulls it forward, right? And that's what hurts. And so the QL, the little muscle in your back that my back hurts, that lower back on the side, that's called your QL. We have this little muscle fighting these huge muscles in the front. So you have like a teeter-totter. Again, I'm all over the place, but bear with me. So it's got to have a balance. You have an agonist and antagonist, right? If my iliacus and psoas is always shortened because I'm seated, well, the little muscle in the back is trying to fire to go straighten up. And the big muscle is going, you're not the boss. We're way bigger than you. So the lower back really starts hurting. And then you start getting atrophy in that QL and those spinal erectors. Well, the psoas and iliacus isn't getting smaller because every step you take is your hip flexor. Right? Bringing your knee to your chest is your iliacus and psoas, your hip flexors. So it's always getting stimulus. So it's not going to be the one that's going to relax. And that's why then it starts pulling on your vertebrae. And that's why people that is a common reason why people have so much back pain. And then they go to the gym and rightly so, they're like, well, I got to get in shape. Like my back hurts and these sort of things. And my doctor is saying, if I do some physical exercise, I might be able to mitigate some of that pain. Well, what they do is they start sitting, they're doing more sit-ups, and now they're strengthening their psoas and iliacus that pulls on their spine even more, creates more back problems.
So to reduce it to if you're fucking sitting around a lot and your back hurts and this makes sense, is there a single or a couple of basic exercises?
I know right where you're going with this. So a Swiss ball, go to Amazon. The Swiss balls are those big exercise balls that you get inflate. Right. You can get some that are, a diameter of like 22 inches. You can get some that are a diameter like 30 inches. They're all rated to handle body weight. I basically just stick your feet underneath the couch. Like, let me do a better job of explaining it. If you're basically sitting on the Swiss ball facing your couch where you normally be sitting, usually a space where you can kind of stick your toes underneath there, right? Maybe you put a sandbag at your feet, or maybe put some weights or something. And just do the opposite. Lay back on that Swiss ball. That Swiss ball will support you, right? And then you can drive into the Swiss ball. You don't have to hinge up. You can just squish that ball down and hinge yourself and sit up to get out of that position. But I tell my athletes, and I do myself all the time, I just say, okay, your daily routine should be a part of doing the opposite of sitting. Right. It really is that simple. Like it really is.
Well, and I know for neck, same thing. I mean, something as simple as just rolling a fucking towel up and laying on your spine, like to correct the
creates traction.
I do that all the fucking time. It works brilliantly.
Absolutely.
But I mean, to me, those are good tangible examples. For the Swiss ball, could you use like the med ball, Dynaball?
You can. We just want to make sure that the hips are at the highest point and you're able to get that concave of your, right? Well, actually, I guess we could say it's convex, right? We want to get that posterior flexion, so crotch up. We want to be able to put ourselves in a position where it's high enough. I mean, I've gotten to the point where you could even do like, just a regular bench, like, a utility bench at the gym. You could even get to the point where you could set some weights on your toes and just kind of arch yourself over it and let your arms, your top of your hands will lay pretty flat on the floor. Maybe your head rests for a bit, but we got that. It's the reverse sit-up. We've got to get that iliacus and psoas back to its length that doesn't piss the back off.
In terms of hip flexor or hip extensions that same way, is there a benefit or are you making the iliacs and psoas stronger by doing that?
If you are able to, like, for example, let's put like in a reverse hyper, right? Where you have your feet hooked in, your butt is basically your hips are on that cushion. You can reach way back. you definitely can. The problem with the sit-up is, you're only working one side.
Yeah.
So we definitely want to hinge. We definitely want to be anterior flex. We do want to be able to do sit-ups. We want to be able to do that motion. But we got to work the other side. It's like, all I'm going to do is, it's like any gym in the world, pretty much, right? You go in, you got 16 bench presses and 1 squat rack.
Yeah. With no line.
Right. And then you have no deadlift platforms.
Yeah.
Right. And we wonder why people back hurts.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time and say, what's one exercise I should do? If you could do one exercise that will and can potentially, outside of severe trauma or inadequate education and knowledge and how to execute it, if there's one exercise that you can do that's going to mitigate back pain, deadlifts.
Yeah. Which is funny because most people find
the first thing, again, it's like last thing. I was listening to I think Dr. Rhonda Patrick on the Joe Rogan. So I think she had her formal education at Johns Hopkins, which is a pretty good medical school, right? So
that's all right.
She was saying, forgive me if it's not her, but it was quoted. It was said on the Joe Rogan podcast by a medical doctor. He's like, they were talking about sleep, and they said, he's like, Joe, just give me your best guess on what you think, how many hours you think that a Johns Hopkins medical student after graduation, how much time have they spent on studying dietetics or sleep? 4 hours. Jeez. 4 hours in a 12-year orthopedic curriculum. 4 hours in 12 years.
And you're spending a third
and
of your life.
Everybody and their brother is going to a doctor to get advice on something they know nothing about.
Yeah, I mean, I run into the same problem with vets and nutrition. I mean, same thing with, most Western doctors. You're telling me to lose weight? Fuck off. It's amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing. And the thing is like, we have set doctors up for failure, in my opinion. We've set them up as this omnipotent know-all. And ego, for most part, has gotten a lot of people. Doctors like, I'm a doctor. It's like, cool, man. Like when I need surgery, I'm going to come find you. Yeah. When I want to talk about exercise science, I am not going to find you because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yeah. And it's all due respect. Yeah. And I mean that because I don't want your job and I don't walk around giving people medical advice. Yeah. So stop fucking giving people medical on my advice since it's my profession, because the way that it works is, post-surgery, you see your PT. Yeah. PT hands it off to the ATC. Yeah. ATC hands it off to the exercise physiologist, not the doctor. Yeah. Doctors, now they're going to keep going back to the medical doctor. And that's the difference in a lot of times in the United States is everyone's autonomous. Well, the doctor doesn't like what the strength coach is doing. The strength coaches don't like what they're doing. You go to other places, like in Europe and places, it's a high performance team. Yeah. And they're like, we really have the best interest in these athletes. Yeah. And you see that some, and that's what I saw in the Navy. Like that was really cool at the command I was at. Like we had the best strength coaches on the planet in one place, truly, like the team. So at one time we had Sean Halls, who's a director of sports science and strength conditioning for the Eagles. Yeah. Right. And then we had Paul Goldberg, who came from the Avalanche, and he is now the program manager for 10th Special Forces Group, strength coach. And then you have 7th Group, which was Mike Sanders. He was a strength coach, and now he's a program manager at 7th Group. Yeah. You had Rob Skinner, who is the head dietitian at Olympic Training Center. Then myself and Mark Stevenson, who is the program manager, who now runs the sports side for the Lions. Yeah. Like that was our staff. Yeah, it's a fucking. And it was like, it was really, really amazing getting to see that and seeing like, we need to be critical. Yeah. We can't just give haphazard information to people that really need it. The athletes, the tactical athletes. We can no longer afford to give misinformation to these people when the information is available. Yeah. And that's what kind of frustrates me. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, one of the things I want to kind of highlight and talk about is I've got it kind of broken down into 3 main categories of actual exercise training, recovery and nutrition, and then, the sleep component and gear and things like that. But I want to spend a few minutes talking about, like, from a training standpoint, obviously everybody's goals are different, but to me, one of the really neat things that I think CrossFit specifically has brought to this country is more of a focus on functional movements. Now, granted, it's been a little double-edged swordish in terms of, how it was originally intended of specializing and not specializing. Like now it's gone so far
to where I think it's kind of counterproductive in some ways, which we'll talk about the culture.
And it's kind of regional too. CrossFit regionally is very different. Like CrossFit in California is way, let me rephrase that. The businesses, the boxes in California are far different than they are, like say in Virginia Beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're right. It's a bit of a flavor you got to taste.
Yeah. And there's such a lack of consistency in terms of, I know they do their best to make certifications of coaches and things like that, but I've been to enough of them in different places where some of them like, man, this place is fucking awesome. And other ones I'm like, how the fuck do you guys, how are you even allowed to operate?
Yeah.
You know?
And it comes down to the coaches, So I'm CrossFit level 1 certified. I've had that for quite a while. It was more of a challenge than anything else. But it was good. Like I'm glad I went through it. And the thing is, I mean, I could say this with absolute truth. I like it all. Yeah. Like CrossFit has done more good by far than bad, number one. And two, it has done something that no other genre of exercise has ever done. It has taken gender out of the picture and made both incredibly, look what we can respectfully blame this on CrossFit. They'll respectfully accept it. Yeah. Thank you, CrossFit, for showing women you can train your ass off and still be exceptionally beautiful. Yeah. Like you're not going to be masculine. Here's a little secret, folks. There's a difference between a muscular woman and a masculine looking woman because the masculine woman had to use testosterone. Yeah. But CrossFit women don't look masculine.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful fucking mix, no doubt about it.
So, and that's the thing is like I don't attest to anything and as like a hard line. I think we need to taste everything.
Yeah. So I think, the thing that I'm curious to get your take on is obviously everybody has different goals. And the reason I bring CrossFit up is that, from an overall general health and fitness, category, I think it does a really good job of bringing kind of a general perspective. But I'm curious to get your take on, for the people listening in terms of talking about different styles, programs, methodologies of training. Of course, just like training a dog, building a business, fucking a relationship, whatever is that, what's the fucking goal? And then you work backwards from there. But generally speaking, like, can you provide some insight and offer some guidance on, for the swath of different people listening in terms of, weight training, fitness training, just kind of breaking it down and giving a broad spectrum synopsis of it as an entity.
Okay. I will say this, rule number one for me when it comes to training, rule number one is do the foundation of what you do or the day one that you start or the bulk of your training, number one has to be what you enjoy. Mm-hmm. Number one, like do what you enjoy. If you enjoy CrossFit, do that the most, right? Do that aspect of performance the most. If you love powerlifting, do that the most. But you also have to look at it and go, I pull myself back to the 30,000 foot view with a person. I go, okay, before we even talk about programming and before we even talk about what you should and shouldn't be doing at this point, we've got to see how you move. We've got to do an assessment, right? We've got to look at how the joint, the hip angle affects the knee angle. Not in the sense of like deep. I'm just saying,
are you fucked up or not?
Right. So this is the analogy I use on people. Like if you take any one of your vehicles and you put them on a flat surface, right? A flat highway that's flat, not concave or convex for rain, but it's flat. And you loosen the lug nuts on all of your tires just a little bit, and you put your truck in first gear and you take your foot out the brake and you let it idle and it starts moving, right? You may not even know that you loosen your lug nuts until you change direction, speed up or slow down. Yeah. Right. And so that's the thing is like you could see somebody walk and go, they look fine. Well, have them jump and land and you see what happens to the joints because we sped them up. We've changed the force component. Okay. And then we get them tired. Your gait changes. And so that's what I want to look at. That's the point of assessment that constantly has to be looked at and go, okay, well, now we've gotten stronger. Well, now we're moving more mass. We can't think that mass isn't going to affect us just because we've gotten stronger. We have to move it the same. So, kind of bringing let me make my point here is that, don't think that, I actually had this comment on the flight here yesterday. A man I was talking to, he goes, would you believe me? We were talking about a diet or whatever. We just hit it off anyway. And he goes, would you believe me that 6 months ago I was 60 pounds heavier? And I was like, not a bit. And it totally surprised him, because at that point he didn't know what I did for a living or whatever kind of thing. And he's like, really, you're not surprised? I go, you're probably running a ketogenic diet, aren't you? And I said, let me guess, you were overweight, you couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, and you're probably ready to kill yourself, weren't you? And he started crying up, he started tearing up. And I was like, yep, tried to kill himself.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Just like I did. Same shit. And I'm like, this is happening all the fucking time. Why? Because we have to look at, like, one of the physical pillars of our society, like military, law enforcement, fire. That's like what I consider our society in the world we work in. A pillar is physical fitness. But when we can't depend on physical fitness, it becomes its own source of stress. Mm-hmm. And it compounds a lot of physical issues. And so, again, bear with me, folks. Don't look at 6 months. Don't go, I gotta, like, you compared yourself to your friends and this crazy sort of unbelievable, I can't accomplish this. And because we look at, from our naivety, because you ask someone like, well, how did you get to this point? Like, yeah, like 15 years, I've been struggling with this, or something happened, like you get hurt, you get that. And we look at it and go, well, I can never do what I could do before because I can't squat anymore. Well, I'm here to tell you that squatting is not an exercise. It's a movement pattern. We don't need to, like, because when you say to someone, you should deadlift. And I know some of your listeners are going to go, fuck deadlift. Like my doctor told me not to do that. I never said, USAPL's was listed. United States powerlifting meet was last weekend. I'm not saying you should max load. A squat is a squat, air squat, goblet squat, whatever it is. We have to, once you execute those movement patterns and get the body moving, right? I'm not saying deep. I'm just saying get moving. And that 15 years of that slow degenerated improvement in your health, you can turn that around. Like he was talking, he goes, 3 weeks after he was on this diet, the guy that was flying next to, he had lost 22 pounds. Yeah. He went and did his first physical in 15 years. So this is, I was saying, he's at 15 year, he let himself go. Yeah. Family, 2 kids. His daughter's about to graduate at the Air Force Academy. His son is a plebe at the Naval Academy. Oh, shit. Like, you're going like, how did this guy's like the nicest, happy. He's like super happy when he came into the plane. And he goes, I did a physical, and the doctors, they didn't believe. They're like, well, wait, we must have we kind of screwed up the blood probably, because there's no way that your blood pressure is this, and there's no way. And he's like, you're going to have stents, you're going to die. And he goes, I'm willing to bet my life that I can just change my lifestyle with my diet and physical activity. And he did. Yeah. And it's such a common thing. And I know it's demoralizing for so many people, but just start with what you enjoy. And it doesn't have to be exercise, like in the sense of like traditional, go get a gym membership. Mm-hmm. If you just walk through, if you were inactive and sedentary and you just decide to get it, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to walk 5 days a week for 20 minutes. You will see an improvement. You will see an adaptation.
Yeah. Well, I know nutrition, which we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Plays a fucking enormous role. But, in terms of, I love the advice of, you got to start somewhere, get evaluated. Is that, for those listening, like, no matter where you're at, and I talk about this with dog training, like, with my online training, is that, I don't care where you're at, it can be better. Mm-hmm. But, there's whether you're at the lowest of the low, the worst fucking spot of your life, you don't even know where to start, versus you're almost to where you want to be and you just can't push it over the hump, or anywhere in between. Like, what does that process look like for somebody, in terms of your recommendation, workout wise, where to, if they're looking to either tweak things or get off their ass or whatever.
Yep.
Can you
start as basic as possible. And the one of the rules I have is don't omit anything unless you have to. And so that's the question, is like, well, my doctor said I shouldn't squat. No, that's not what I mean. And I'm not saying you should take my advice over your doctor.
Sort of.
Officially. I'm not supposed to say that. But thought is that, is the basics. And I mean, everyone needs to be able to squat, bend over, pick stuff up, get your hands over your head and kind of thing. So that's what I'm looking at people is like, And no day number one, one of my rules outside of competition, I don't train to failure. Failure breeds failure. Training to failure all the time in a gym will teach you to fail.
Yeah.
Physically. It'll train your nervous system to when it gets to a point, it will go, hey, historically we've shut down from here. That's why you see so many people in gyms week after week after week after week, not seeing any adaptation or improvement. And they're all doing this with their shoulder. Yeah. Right? Because they're just, the load to which they're putting themselves under, load being heavy or reps, weight, volume, like the workload that they're enduring, their body isn't able to adapt to it at the pace at which they're breaking it down. Mm-hmm. So we don't want that to happen for beginners, because most beginners will go, fuck that. This is terrible. This is painful. I was in worse pain now. So start off very slow, be basic, right? Just if it hurts, ask yourself, okay, is there a substitute? Right? It's like, well, I don't want person day one to go into a squat rack and load the bar up. Yeah. But I do want them to like maybe hold on to one of the verticals of the squat rack, assume a good squatting position, and just do body squats. Yeah. And even for me, it's like if you ever tried like the air squats where you drag your knuckles and stick, I forget what it's called. Just do 100 of those. And I'm in fairly decent shape. It's hard. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not saying go do 100, but I'm like, we have to realize that there's real relevancy in starting basic. Yeah. Just like after an injury, what do? We probably should start basic. Look after an illness. Like when we're ill, what do we, again, it was kind of bridging the dietetics, but I want people to train, and this is going to sound a little bit odd. This is about movement pattern specifically. Yeah. I want people to move so well, it's almost like they think they're hurt. Because if you get outside of it and they go, oh, that's going to hurt. Well, then move well. Yeah. Like move efficiently, move the way that the bones, tendons, and ligaments. Now the question is like, well, I don't know how to do that. Yeah. I don't. And so that's why it's like there's a lot of machines that put you in those positions to begin to learn some of those movement patterns, begin to learn, what load and stimulus feels like, what residual soreness you're probably going to feel. Understand those things first, that they're going to come. Don't let them be a deterrent. Yeah. One of the things I know I'm curious of is, and I post the days that I work out, usually it's 4 days a week, sometimes less. Like this week, it'll be three days, but, I post on a whiteboard the workouts that I do, and I started here fairly recently just because a lot of people were asking like, what do you do? Why do you do it? Whatever. And I'm curious to kind of get your take. Obviously, again, there's going to be a huge variance between who's asking and where they're at and whatever, but is there kind of a programming formula or methodology that you adhere to subscribe workouts to people or to develop them for people, and how do you go about that? Yeah, it's actually pretty straightforward and it's pretty simple. I mean, this stuff has been turn of the century. This stuff is really old in the sense of like it's been substantiated and it works and it's consistent, and that's where it's CrossFit does it in some regard where it's like they talk about diversity of training, and that diversity of training has to go beyond exercises and weights, right? It has to go beyond exercises. The body can only adapt linearly so long. What I mean by linearly is like, hey, I want to put on muscle mass. Mm-hmm. The reps and sets and weights that person chooses to do that has a shelf life. Your body can only take on that singular stimulus for so long. Then you have to change it. So what does that mean? It means when I get somebody, especially a beginner or anybody, outside of like a former pro bodybuilder or some guys in season, stuff like that, is like, I want to repair tissue. So hypertrophy. So the term hypertrophy is increased muscle, right? So increased tissue. So that's a healing process as well. It's a healing process. It's a learning process, and it's a safer process. So I want to get people into a hypertrophy program right out of the gate, and then it becomes, what do you want to do? Then what do you need to do? So like if you're going to do CrossFit for a couple of weeks, like do 6 to 8 weeks. And you go, okay, I really probably should start working on something else. Okay. Well, what is it something I really need to work on? Well, in my CrossFit workout, I really am struggling on my pull-ups. Well, let's focus on 6 weeks of just improving the position and the muscles associated to back strength. It's not just pull-ups. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm always doing is looking at someone from an optimization standpoint and go, what do you value the most? What do you need the most? Is it a health thing? Is it a performance thing? And then you just, it's called block periodization. For a period of time, like Monday is not International Bench Day, right? It's whatever day is associated to whatever you're trying to improve. And you cycle it. So here's the simple. So I'm going to do a hypertrophy program for a couple weeks, and then I might work some strength. So higher weights, lower reps. And then I'm going to go into lower weight, higher reps, high velocity. I'm going to do that for a bit. And then I'm going to go back, right? After that trauma, those are 3 different traumas specifically on the nervous system. That high intensity interval training and that strength training is extremely, extremely volatile to the nervous system.
Yeah.
So we got to basically come off the gas a little bit, go back to something that's not so nervous system demanding, and then we get back into it again. It's not a lot different than what we experience, in a kill house. You don't start off with a platoon size night vision night run with tons of active shooters and unknowns. You start off with 2-man pistol entry.
Yeah.
That's what your exercise program should look like. And that's the thing what CrossFit's getting a lot better at. As beginners come into boxes, CrossFit is now going, we can't just throw these men and women in the wad. It'll turn them away. They'll get hurt. They'll hate it. They'll get angry. They'll be intimidated, whatever it may be. Yeah. Some will stick.
Yeah.
So you start seeing that especially a lot out west. A lot of the CrossFit gyms where they kind of originated with Castro and such, they are very, very welcoming to squatting, benching, deadlift. I've been in CrossFit gyms in other countries where it's just like you're not allowed to do anything but what it says for the workout of the day. And I get there's times for that in business, and that's still the case in a lot of CrossFit gyms where there's time windows to do the WOD. But it's really cool to see. Again, CrossFit is a really good place to kind of see what the pulse of fitness is, because they're the ones in the position to make the change the fastest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that, my routine is that, my recommendation routine is start with repairing tissue, and then you have to build something. Am I going to build strength? Am I going to be power? Okay, which one am I going to build? They're different mathematically. And then you go, well, I'm going to lift heavy weights for a little while, and then I'm going to come off the heavy weights. I'm going to move them fast, and I'm going to go back and just keep cycling in. And at any point of those phases where you do like a 6-week or 8-week block, in between you go, well, shoot, man, I want to spend some time swimming. So I might do a block of 3 weeks of just swimming and calisthenics, just to change, but I'm still not removing the stimulus entirely.
Yeah.
And so I just think as long as we're applying a stimulus with purpose, and then make sure that we don't stay in that window too long. Like I said, it's like, we don't want to do high intensity interval training for a week. We want to do it for a couple weeks, right? I don't want to do heavy strength training for 12 weeks unless you're a power lifter and that's your job and you've got really good anabolics. Like, great, we can go 12 weeks go into the platform on that. Yeah. But most people, especially in the tactical populations, like you do those long deployments, and we think like about the only time we seem to be able to fall in a routine on deployment, or it was on deployment, right? Where we could lift and eat and get all these, like, I always used to joke with guys at command that SEAL stands for sleep, eat, and lift. Yeah. That was a deployment. It was like, what are we doing outside of going out and doing our thing? It's like sleep, eat, and lift. Yeah. So like that was one of those things that, you get back, and we don't want to, when you have the ability to, basically what we're doing is we're changing pressure. That's a value. Make sure we change those pressures to allow the body. It's called super compensation. We apply a ton of stress, and then we pull that stress away a little bit. We just throttle back. The body goes, the body's still kind of thing, the nervous system still think that stimulus is going to be equivalent to what it's been. So it actually recovers at a quicker rate for a short period of time. Yeah. And then we can throttle back up, because then we've healed. Yeah.
So the gist that I hear, and I agree. I know for me, I've done enough different programs, whether it's, combination of training regimens coupled with, sleep variations coupled with nutrition programs and everything, to where I feel like I have a pretty good, feeling or finger on the pulse of myself, of when I need to throttle back, when I can bump it up. And obviously, the amount of sleep you have, the amount of stress you're under, how your nutrition has been the last few days, few weeks, few months, all play a huge role. But is there kind of a guideline that you could say, don't tax your central nervous system more than X number of days per week?
Yeah. Well, there are a ton of variables, of course.
Yeah.
If you train 5 days a week at moderate intensity, and you're again we talk about sleep and stuff like that too, but I train pretty intensely relatively, like in terms of volume. Like I train an hour and a half a day doing different things, 5 days a week, and then two of those days sometimes is just a 30 or 40 minute sort of quick circuit. And that's what I want people to do, is like, I would say this more than anything. I would say, when it comes to something, just keep it super simple, right? As a beginner specifically, just start off with attributing a day to a body part a little bit. Go, hey, today I'm going to work legs, and I'm going to go do, next day I'm going to do a little bit of triceps and chest, and you kind of float, just go into a gym space and experiment for a minute. And that's where you're going to find out that I need a routine. Mm-hmm. Once you get on a routine, then it's easier, like you say, it's easier to measure it. Yeah. And so that's difficult. So to answer your question is this: doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. It does, but it doesn't. It doesn't really matter what program you start with. Just get into a program, because once you're into it, then you have a point of evaluation. Yeah. Right. Because people ask me all the time, it's like, well, where do I start? And I go, well, there's not a really bad place to start. Yeah. So just get started. And if a week or two in, you go, this isn't right. Well, then let's communicate. Like this, that may not be in a good, but we don't know. Yeah. Now, again, if someone's hasn't spent a lot of time in the training environment, I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna throw them into a high intensity interval training or a heavy intensity session, but I am gonna start them off with the challenge. Yeah. Right. And I'm gonna do it with a large muscle group. Probably what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus I'm gonna focus heavy on leg and back strength, not heavy in the sense of weight, but just every day that I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna focus on supporting that back, supporting that spine through the shoulders and chest and triceps. Like everything I'm gonna do is gonna support that trunk. Yeah. And what you find is when that spine is stable, the arms, the legs, everything else just falls in place. Yeah. And you'll find, and here's a really long answer, short question. You will find that the start is just as simple as doing that. Then you'll go, okay, I don't like this, or I do. Yeah. Or I do like it because I can manage it and these sort of things. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think, the reason I asked that question is I know, I'm guilty of it. I know most people are in our society. We were talking about kind of the 50s, 60s era football coaches. But like we have this kind of almost preconceived notion of, more is better, no matter what. Like, right. Fucking train harder. Like you see all these fucking cheese dick memes. It's like fucking right. Get after it. Crush. Yeah,
my warm up is your workout kind of nonsense.
Yeah, and and that is one heartburn I've historically had with CrossFit. I was fortunate enough to be an instructor when headquarters, I don't remember if they invited us or the command sent a handful of us instructors up there in early 05. Mm-hmm. Before anybody even knew what the fuck CrossFit was. We went up there to do a level 1 cert weekend, and it was very eye-opening. However, the way that they went about it at that time, and I see still a lot of similarities both in CrossFit and in a lot of workout programs, is that like, fucking crush it, get after it, yep. To the point where like we went up there and every one of us, because of we're SEAL instructors, like, we're going up there and trying this thing out. Like all of us had symptoms of rhabdo almost.
Yeah. For sure.
I was wrecked for like 2 weeks because it was too much, too intense, too close. We were doing like 3 WODs a day. Every fucking thing you got was like Fran, Helen, and Grace on Saturday, and then 3 other ones equally as motherfuck the next day. Total competition against everybody, everything you have, and it was a fucking detriment. But my point is that I think people need to really understand that to kind of dovetail onto what you're saying is that just fucking start somewhere. But I think it's also important that, for people starting out, or even if you're at somewhere where your plateaus, you may be overtraining.
For sure.
And that leads us and segues into the next component, which is the restoration, the recovery, and how to keep from doing that. Because to me, that's fascinating. And I think if I had to pinpoint, at least from my perspective, not having your background and experience, but one element of exercise societally speaking, that we are the least knowledgeable about, and the most naive is the importance of sleep,
Yep.
of not overtraining, of recovering properly. I mean, one of my favorite adages is there's no such thing as overtraining, only under recovering.
For sure.
So I would love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think that this argument is always going to be an argument, or it's right now it seems to be such a big argument because of how resilient the human body is.
Yeah.
We take it for granted because it's so resilient. It can endure these things, and we think, well, I'm training really hard. I'm supposed to be sore. Of course I'm chronically sore. I'm always in the training room. I'm always in the kill house. We're always doing something. So we look back and go, well, that's just normal.
Yeah.
And the reality is it's not.
Yeah.
Certainly you should train intensely and get sore from that regularly. But this is going to sound like I'm making shit up, but we're trying to achieve the minimal dose every day. And that's not to say that minimal dose isn't a lot.
Yeah.
And that's where people get in trouble. They go, well, yeah, if this reps and sets, if we double it, it's got to make me bigger and stronger. Well, it depends, but that theory is incredibly flawed, because no matter how fast you damage your muscle tissue, let's say you have the perfect nutrients. Let's just make that. Let's create a vacuum. You have perfect nutrients. We clone you. Okay. We put you put your other clone that you don't like through this awful workout.
Fuck that
right?
guy.
We put the clone that you like through a minimum dose program. We put them through the exact same weights, reps, sets, not percentages. I'm sorry. No, same percentages, same number of sets, less reps, a minimal doses of reps based on those movements. You will see that clone that you like will advance tremendously fast compared to the one that's constantly in overtraining.
Yeah.
Because I want to look let's look at a calendar year of 365 days. If I said to somebody, we are only going to take 52 days off this year, people will go, holy crap, that's a lot, or that's not much at all. This is going to suck. This year is going to be tough. And when I put them through training, my programs, we have 0 missed days due to injury. And over 365 days, if you have 0 missed days due to injury or overtraining, what do you have at the end of it? You have a person that can run through a fucking wall.
Yeah.
Like, you have somebody that, regardless of where they're at in their training, they can endure. Yeah. And that's one of the things I've gleaned from the community that's so good. It's like we've got this population of people that will just run through anything. And you have the same thing in sport. So let's give them something that gives them opportunity, because on the field or on the court or whatever it is, on the pool or on the, in combat, you don't have an opportunity to go, oh, we've gone beyond my capability, time out.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with training to the point where you can't recover. Mm-hmm. So it's almost binary. Your brain is not binary, folks. So bear with me. It's just an example. It's a binary decision in the sense of more has got to be better, kind of like you mentioned. But from the standpoint of how fast can the body adapt, it's not at all binary. Mm-hmm. It's directly correlated to sleep and dietetics. But for me, I just want to make sure everyone understands that. And it's tough because we live in the moment and we hear these things and we want to train hard and get it now. But if you have an intent to change your lifestyle, like truly change your lifestyle, don't be in a big damn hurry.
Yeah.
It just won't work.
Yeah.
I want to phrase that. The vision, what you envision in your head of being the adaptation that you're going to achieve, like your goal is like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to look like this and feel like this. If you don't look and feel the way that you presume that you would, it has nothing to do with your effort. It has everything to do with the recipe.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we could get the ingredients. My mom was a chef. I was a pastry chef. We could get the ingredients of a cake made from scratch and put it on one side of a counter. We can get the ingredients and put it of bread and put it on another side of the counter. They're going to look about the fucking same.
Yeah.
Right? But if you mix them wrong or you omit ingredients, what are you going to get? You're going to get shitty cake and a shitty bread. Yeah. If you start omitting stuff that you know that's necessary for a recipe to get to your goal, then why the fuck are we omitting it?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great analogy. And I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, listeners included, you know, want that, like, well, just tell me what I need to do. And it's like, well, it's that simple, but it's not that simple. I mean, to me, it's
simple to about the 70%.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the biggest takeaway is you've got to start to give yourself a reference, and then everybody's going to be a little bit different. But just like with dog training, like there's not a set exact way that you train every dog, but the principles are all the exact fucking same. How you're applying them are going to vary a little bit.
Yep.
You know, and I see, you know, weight training and diet and exercise and all those things the same way. In terms of recovery, I know it's the same thing. Is it like, how much sleep should I be getting? Well, enough to fucking recover. Well,
right.
You know, for some people, maybe it's 6 hours. Maybe
and that's the thing too, is that there's a volumes of research on what that answer is. It's conclusive. Yeah. It's absolutely conclusive. And the best book on the planet about this is called Why We Sleep.
Yeah.
And it breaks exactly down. It breaks all the research down and the anecdotal information. Yeah. It's a very easy read. Yeah. And the fact is this, is that 1 in every 230,000 people can do less than 7.5 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah.
That's what the research found. They found 1 out of 230,000 people that, you actually have your genetic makeup is predisposed to getting less sleep. Yeah. Anyone, here, I'm talking directly to you. If you are getting less than 7.5 hours of sleep a night, you're wrong. In the sense of, I'm good. I do fine off 5. Yep, you're a liar. Yeah. You may think but that's a testament to the human resilience. I know people are rolling their eyes. I just fucking love it because I'd love to have this conversation in person and tell you how fucking stupid you are. So the reality is this, is like sleep impairment is the only time the human body self-regulates some of the things that are necessary for hormone, right, regulation, muscle repair, brain repair, all happens in sleep. And if you've omitted the number one capability of recovering from high stress environments, why? Yeah. Why are we choosing to say, I do fine off 5? Why? And I get it. Like, life is busy. And here's just so you know, just don't sound like an asshole. I averaged about 3 hours of sleep a night for 8 years because I was like, fuck sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. That was like, I have a keychain that says that.
Yeah.
and I did. But the reason why I was able to stay up, Percocet, Vicodin, all those sort of things, they were stimulant to me. And I looked at it, and finally, hair started falling out. My fingernails started falling out. Like, my body shut down. I couldn't walk. I stopped walking.
Was that the point where you got to where you were feeling suicidal?
No, this was in about 2012, 2011. My back just, for whatever reason, like, again, it was just one of those things that I wasn't practicing when I was preaching. I was heavily medicated. So again, here's my other sort of disclaimer. At no point did the United States Navy, the SEAL teams, or anybody influence me on my decision to take Percocet, Vicodin. That was my choice. Yeah. Those are my decisions that I made outside of the good medical advice once I did hurt myself, and that's when I got hooked on it, so that kind of stuff. So I allowed that to happen. But, I don't want to think that people are like, oh my God, like I can't ever get 8 hours of sleep. That's crazy. That's bananas. Well, again, the vast majority of people that are going to say that, it's really a matter of priority.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not necessarily saying this to the mom and dad that work full time and have 3 kids under the age of 10. That's not exactly who I'm talking to. Or, one of the buddies at the command, tried to have kids, tried to got back from deployment. His wife got onto, the medications to improve the chances of conceiving. Mm-hmm. Forgive me for the term, but, triplets right out of the gate, triplet girls right out of the gate. And I was like, that right there would just put me over the edge. But, I mean, not suicidal, but I just mean just sense of like, that's not who I'm talking about. So let me get back on track here. Is sleep like anything else. If you are a poor sleeper, you are not going to be able to. Let me be very clear. I am saying sleep more than 7.5 hours as per my research and my knowledge and my experts that I glean this information. If you just one night go, screw it, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep every night, and you've always gotten 5, you're not going to sleep. You have to, believe it or not, you're going to have to start easing into it. You're going to have to change that routine entirely to get that, because you're going to have to create a combination of time.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, I think, I know there's people listening right now. They're like, yeah, I can carve the time out, but I can't fucking sleep.
Yep.
One of the things I know for me personally, and when I travel, I sleep so poorly because I've been on a Tempur-Pedic mattress here. For me. It's a Tempur-Pedic Cloud Supreme, I think it is.
That's what I've got. No, seriously, I do. I literally have that bed. How is it that we have the same bed?
Yeah, I mean,
creepy.
we should make out.
Yeah, totally. We'll do that after.
We got the same bed. No, we're going to do it on camera.
That's why I do it right.
But, for me, like I've had that, I just got a new mattress here that's the same fucking one. But for 10 years. But like when I get into that bed, I mean, 10 years after having it the first time, every time I get in it, I'm just like, holy fucking shit. This is like,
thank you, Tempur-Pedic.
Yeah. I mean,
for
like,
making a fucking awesome bed.
No, I know. And I've tried a number of the rip-offs, and none of them are the same. Like, there's no substitute for it. And I can assure you, Tempur-Pedic,
it's not.
If you're listening, feel free to send me another one. They're not giving me a fucking dime to say that. Is that they? That has changed my life sleep wise.
For sure.
But if you could, I know because from a.
I'll give you the answer on how to do it. Right, how to sleep better.
The physical stress mitigation, I know that's a huge component. Are there things in terms of helping augment sleep for those of you who are like, fuck, I have the time, I just can't do it. Some of it is nutrition and exercise. It's kind of a trifecta: sleep, nutrition, exercise.
Yep.
But
and then the big one is like, I want you guys to think about 2 things. Number one is when you go to the gym, what do? You warm up, you prep. You prep your nervous system for the stimulus that's about to come. And how do we know that? Because most people, when they go into a gym, what do? They yawn. Yeah. It's a nervous system reflex that's saying, I know what stress is coming. I know that this stress that's coming, and I mean, this is the theory. This is the most prominent theory on why we yawn in weight rooms. The brain is perceiving a stress that's about to come. That stress is about to come because of historical data. Okay, historical nervous system data in our brain. It goes, we've needed to increase our oxygen uptake. So you start yawning.
Yeah.
Right. You start going on a mission. Stress comes. We start yawning. It's a reflex. So keep that in mind. Understand that, like, if you can't sleep, it's because you've created this black and white. It's time to go to bed. It's time to sleep. But that's not how it works. That's not how the body down regulates into sleep. That's not how it eases itself into REM. We want to create a sleep time routine. Mm-hmm. It really is that simple.
Which does not include Facebook.
No, it doesn't. And I say simple in the sense, again, as an itemized list, not so simple as actuating that list.
Can you walk through your process or a good sample process as to how to prep that?
I treat myself like I'm an infant boy or girl, I guess. I'm not gender specific, but this is why, like, that doesn't answer your question at all. It does in the sense of this. For any of you that have children, okay, how would you treat your 2-year-old infant? You monitor noise, you monitor temperature, you monitor food, okay, and you monitor the clothes that they wear, right? They're in cotton, they're drinking hopefully breast milk and or some form of slow digesting protein formula. Okay. That's casein. That's cottage cheese. That's Greek yogurt. It's slow digesting. Okay. And then we manage the room temperature. Most research on sleep right now is somewhere, again, it's all regional. Like if you're from Trinidad, and I had that experience training with some of the Trinidad Defense Force, and I was like, you should probably keep your hotel room around 70 degrees. They froze their ass off. Not a good idea. Yeah. So, but someone from Minnesota, kind of thing. So temperature should be set somewhere. I mean, I've seen research as low as 65. I have a chili pad on my bed. Mm-hmm. I set it at 68. My bed stays at 68 degrees under the covers.
Chili pad. Tell me
about that. Worth every dollar. It's $1,500, but it's worth it. It's worth every dollar. So, and then, I just create a routine that prepares my body to go to sleep. I allow enough time, and I add, we'll call it physical activity, to that routine that further reinforces what I'm about to do. So for example, if you read every night before you go to bed, when you get on a plane to read, what's going to happen? You've created a Pavlovian response to fall asleep. If all you've ever done is turn the lights off, shit, forgot an email. Oh crap, forgot to feed the dog. Did I lock the door? Oh God, I forgot to kiss the wife. Shit, the toilet's got a drip in it. What happens is we've created this stressful model of sleep looks like this. I've got to do it. I have to do it. Especially when we're talking about, well, man, I'm only going to have 4 hours of sleep tonight. It's going to be shit anyway. So, well, that's why I'm a big believer in quality over quantity. So if you set yourself up in routine, just like you do read every night, like for me, my routine is shut all the lights off in the house. I pour two protein shakes. Both are casein based. It has my GABA in it. It has my magnesium bisglycinate in it. I have my hemp oil and I have my omegas. I take that about 30 to 40 minutes before I go to bed. Then I brush my teeth with mint toothpaste. Like, that's not fucking exciting. I don't eat mint gum. I don't chew mint cookies. I don't eat toothpaste flavored ice cream. Mint is sleep. Right? I am creating a Pavlovian response that's sleep. Bruce Lee used to use a shower so he could visually see the steam. So he taught himself, that's how he used steam to do that. So we are creating a Pavlovian response, whatever that is. And so many people kind of already have things they do before they go to bed. They brush their teeth, they tuck their kids in. I am to the point where if I do it out of order, I don't start the process over. I'm not quite there yet where I'm flipping light switches 15 times to go in a room, but I do. I have a step-by-step before I go to bed, and I do. And it took me a while to get my body to go, oh, that's what we're doing. We're here to sleep now. This is a bed. Like, what's this kind of thing? It's not very common that I'm awake beyond about 3 minutes.
Yeah. What's interesting about in dog training, we call it the power of context, or I do, but a lot of people do, is that with dogs, especially because there isn't that logic and reasoning component in their brains, it's all simple associations with everything. So it's, A plus B equals C, which I talk about a lot, but same type of thing is that, whether it's putting a specific collar on them or using an only leash, or you only get this treat when, there are so many fucking different ways that we utilize that and take huge full advantage of that contextual association and the power of it in dog training. And it's interesting. Like, I'll be the first one to admit, I never even thought about that as it relates to prepping your body to sleep, but it makes fucking great sense.
Because that's what we do to our children. Look at what we did to your kids when they were babies, right? Yeah. You guys were like, shh. Shut the lights off. They were in cotton jammies, right? Because you don't want to be in polyester because it builds.
Oh, and French linen,
that too. Yeah, the 800 count and higher for sure. Maybe 1,200 for your kids, but we've got to stop looking at how the body reacts to certain stimulus and be surprised by it at this point. We're all looking at the other spectrum of bad sleep, bad everything. No wonder why. Like, oh, it's just the way life is. And it doesn't have to be. Now, but to be extremely clear again, the process for me to go from 3 hours of sleep, severely opiate addicted, all these sort of things, to now where I sleep 10 hours a day, 10 hours a night usually, 9.5, 10 hours a night usually, unbroken. I usually wake up once to go to the bathroom, but it depends. And like I'm a very avid consumer of cannabis and in the evenings, and depending on what strand or dosage I use, even sometimes I'm not on it now, but like when I travel and such, but I can still stick to my routine. And last night, the only problem I have then sometimes is then falling back asleep. And so for me, what I do is I'll just start the process over. I literally will go downstairs. I'll make another protein shake. I'll change out what I'm wearing. And then I'll go back, or I'll pet my cats, or I'll find something like that for me is very soothing. My two cats are extremely important to me. They're very much my service animals, and so there's things in my life. Like I don't want to watch TV, and I don't really like the idea of reading. That to me can take my mind somewhere else, because that's the problem with a lot of people too is, again, you wake up in the middle of the night and you may have fallen asleep really quick, and you may only be 3.5 weeks into this new sleep routine, and you're like, fuck, man, I just keep waiting. It's very, very difficult. I very much understand this. Is it's extremely difficult to be patient when it comes to something like I can't sleep. And it's very evident because it in of itself becomes its own source of stress.
Yeah.
Lacking of sleep is got to be one of the most stressful things that we encounter, because there are people, for me, for example, right? I've worked with a number of professional athletes that are the top of the top in their sport, and their sleep routine is fantastic, right? It's a common thread for high performance individuals. There's going to be so many people that are like, well, yeah, but Bill Gates, this guy, and Elon Musk, and Thomas Jefferson, and only slept 15 minutes. Like, okay, got it, man. Like we're arguing outliers at this point, but the rest of the 99.9% of us, what now, almost 9 billion people, is that we sleep based off of the rise and fall of the sun. Yeah. We live in a world where we're a light switch away from blue light. Yeah. Right. So we've got to stop wondering. Like, I think that's the big statement. If you are sleeping poorly, don't be surprised. It's the world that you've chose to live in. And that's I tell a lot of people too. And even myself, I go, I slept like crap because I chose to. And they're like, well, no, you didn't. Like, no, the decisions I made leading up to, or my lifestyle that I decided to leave, those are my choices. No one was like waking me up. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned protein shakes and also, yogurt, cottage cheese. So is that, I want to get into nutrition next, is that there's obviously a purpose behind that. It's the slow digestion to
it is. Yeah. And that's really simple. I don't do any carbs at night usually, other than when I snack. Like my whole, you could say, Mike, you could go, hey Jeff, what did you do last Tuesday? I could tell you exactly my routine to the minute of what I did, what I ate, where I was at. I could do that for the last 6 months. Yeah. And so now again, you're probably all thinking this guy is fully OCD. Well, it was either that or kill myself. Yeah. I mean, truly, in all honesty, it was like, I'm a person of extremes. It's like listening to Mitch. He's like, well, screw it, man. I just went to Buds. I didn't even know what I had to do. Right. Yeah. He just goes and does it. And like, that's kind of how I was. I mean, I knew what I was getting myself into a little bit more, but I'm saying like, when it comes to making these changes that we know are necessary, for us to think that it's going to be really, really easy and seamless is super ignorant. Yeah. And once we swallow that pill, a lot of people, we go, okay, this really isn't within my control. And once you admit that to yourself, after you admit it, it's not, don't make big sweeping changes. Change one variable at a time, right? Go, okay, I'm going to introduce this. I'm going to introduce turning all the lights off in my house except for a couple little lights 30 minutes before I go to bed. That's all I'm going to do. Yeah. And now you've limited yourself to what you can do, if we can hopefully get away from our phones. But getting on track is that if you take your time getting into it, the body really wants to be treated well. Yeah. And when it gets treated well, it responds almost immediately. It's just that we are there's so many variables that we want to change. Like, I got to change my diet, change my sleep, change my exercise, change all this stuff. And a lot of people do make all those changes and they go, I got a lot better. And they go, what was it for you? And they go, I don't know. I changed everything. Or they go, well, fuck this. This isn't for me. This lifestyle isn't for me. I don't want to do this. And we go, well, why not? And I go, well, it didn't work. And I go, what did you do? We go, I changed this and I changed this and I changed this and I changed this. And I go, well, I bet if you hadn't done that and hadn't done that, you probably would have gotten at least, you know what I mean? Like, and that's like in the fervent of the human mind is like, we just want to jump at it and get after it and see this big change in a short period of time. And that's the thing with dietetics is one of the best pieces of advice I ever got about dietetics was you can't out-train your fork. Yeah. Even someone like that, I have a very pretty solid routine. And even me, if I decide to eat like a glutton, I will see it. I will feel it, and I had severe arthritis. I've had degenerative bone disease. I was deaf in my left ear. I had a lot of skin issues. I had a tremendous amount of depression, extreme amount of depression, anxiety for a long time. And when I changed my diet, things became, I was finally able to, between sleep and eating, I was finally able to gain control of my own mood. Yeah. my own energy level. I could control it.
Yeah. I mean, food is a drug. Let food be thy medicine. I mean, it's absolutely apparent. I know I'm the same way. I'm curious. I mean, obviously there's...
Did I not answer your question? I tend to do that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the question was, do you eat, what do you eat before bed?
Yeah. So my go-to is this, is I use a company called Thorne that has been, I've been with for a couple of years now. They were the company that we use at the Command.
Oh, okay.
That's what Major League Baseball uses.
Thorne,
THORNE. It's the only supplement company in the United States that has formal approval for consumption for all Olympic athletes. It's completely clean. It's the cleanest. Again, it's funny because you have all these companies like clean this. There is no company in the United States better and cleaner than Thorne, and that's a fact. Yeah. Like now there are other companies, like there's a company called Clean that is all clean. It's just that their spectrum of supplements isn't nearly as large. Yeah. If on the back of my supplement it doesn't say NSF for sport, I won't take it.
Yeah.
I just won't. If it could say Informed Choice. Informed Choice is the U.S. third-party certification. Thorne is both. Yeah. Thorne is Informed Choice and world recognized. So, and they're also one of the only. Again, there's a whole. It's not a plug on Thorne. It's a plug on Thorne in the sense of factual information on where to find your supplements. It's there, and a lot of companies are making good supplements. So, don't make the mistake of going to a department store and buying your supplements. Yeah. Don't go to Vitamin Shop and think that you're going to be able to find all the necessary nutrients in that store. Yeah. And it's not a knock on Vitamin Shop, but we've got to look outside of places and go, wait a minute, like I can't buy organic free range chicken in Vitamin Shop. Yeah, because that's where it starts. Yeah. It starts with your macronutrients. Yeah. But I use before bed I use a high casein protein, slow digesting. I use GABA. A lot of people use gabapentin, which is a prescription. That's not what I'm talking. GABA is a neurotransmitter. So if you're all fired up, you're all excited and ready to learn and study, and you take GABA, you'll improve. It'll help you that. If you want to sleep, you can, whatever your brain is state that it's in, that's what you got to be careful with GABA is if you're.
Is that a medication or a supplement?
No, it's a supplement. Yeah, it's a natural neurotransmitter.
Does Thorne sell that also?
Yep. Yep. And then their other one is magnesium bisglycinate. Magnesium is, but see the magnesium, the GABA is in the recovery drink, which is their bedtime. It's called the Recovery Pro.
Okay.
The GABA is and the magnesium are in it, and it's a milk-based protein. A whole milk-based protein, so it's got some fat and it's a slow digesting, high amino acid spectrum. So the protein can be down as long as the amino acid spectrum is way up. Mm-hmm. The bioavailability goes way up.
Yeah. Okay.
So you don't have to have like a gut full of like 50 grams of protein. It's 12.
Yeah.
But I take 2 of them. I take one right before I go to bed, and I wake up in the middle of the night. I take another one. Yeah. Just because I'm 240 pounds.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to heal that muscle mass. And then the magnesium bisglycinate is tastes fantastic. So there's different sorts of magnesium. Magnesium is like all the rage now, and so is zinc, and so is all these. So zinc and magnesium can't be unilaterally absorbed. If you take magnesium, you take zinc, whatever of those minerals, those hard minerals, attach itself to the receptor, it's the only thing it's going to absorb magnesium. So you don't want to take magnesium, like ZMA is a huge scam. Zinc, magnesium, they're 3 hard metals that don't absorb unilaterally. So we don't want to take a whole bunch of supplements before we go to bed. We should have relied on our macronutrients for the night. But I take a slow digesting carb, I take my magnesium, I take hemp oil, as well, specifically for inflammation. And I also take I take a fair amount of stuff. Curcumin, which is really good anti-inflammatory. But again, I don't eat sugar much. I don't eat any refined breads or pastas outside of like, a couple times a week for like, I might have a burrito or something. But when I omitted all that, my arthritis went away.
Yeah.
Right. My inflammation went away.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I mean, I have a pretty specific routine and things that I take, many of which are on the same spectrum of what you do. You mentioned both hemp or CBD oil, but you also said cannabis. Do you partake in both?
Yeah, all of it. Yeah. So, and I use them for very specific. Now that's the difficult thing because there's not a lot of there's a lot of research on it. There's more there's more research on cannabis than there is in any other thing that's in that medical world, and that's because the federal government through all those times of the 80s and 90s was trying to find ways to say this is bad, but they never found one. All they uncovered the fact that they were full of shit, except for one thing. So I think it's boys only, maybe boys and girls. Boys between the ages of 13. I think it's because that was the research paper that I just read. Between the ages in 13 and 22 for a developmental brain, there tends to be a higher risk of I don't know what the word was is acquiring schizophrenia.
Oh, no shit.
Because of that developmental brain. That developing brain. It's like, I don't want any there should not be any children outside of, epilepsy and certain other things that medical doctors are going, hey, we need to get some intervention here. But I look at it and I go, well, I don't want to discount anything that may work. Yeah. And it works substantially well.
So are you doing edibles for that?
Nah, I do a bunch of different things. Edibles doesn't, I don't dislike edibles, but it's different. So when you ingest the edible, your liver, it converts the THC into something else. I forget what it is, but it's more psychoactive. Mm-hmm. So, but we're trying to get that CBD and that THC into our bloodstream. And the fastest way to do that really is through inhalation. So I have the vape pens.
Yeah.
And for me, but just to be super clear, this is recent for me. Like I've only been a consumer for almost a year is all. Yeah. Like I was a straight edge kid. I don't drink. I've never even tried. I've tried alcohol. At a wedding, Morgan Charles' wedding, and I've tried some alcohol, but I don't drink. It's not my vice. And so this is very new to me because my whole belief system as a child was like, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. Now there needs to be some real oversight and regulation and, holistically on this stuff. But I look at it and go, well, I'm 40 years old. And everyone that I know in the world, the performance world, like this is what they use.
Yeah.
Right. It's no longer banned in the UFC. Why? Because it fucking helps. Yeah. Resets neural pathway, potentially can reset neural pathways because of that brain trauma, right? That you're going to receive. Now
you're talking specifically to both CBD and THC.
Both, right? And then so I guess the thing is that I am really looking forward to the next 18 months because these questions about, well, how much should I take? Well, what's the difference between these two? There's all those questions that need to be answered on a grand scale so we can talk about dosing and keep it safe because there is real potential for harm. Obviously there is with anything, right? Yeah. So we want to get ahead of that. But for me, it's right when I get done training, I take CBD. I use it acutely for inflammation post-training, very specifically. I use it in the morning as well. So if I'm really stiff, I start off that goes with me as well. But also in the evening, I might make a tea, like an orange peel tea, some ginger, and I'll put CBD oil straight in it, or MCT.
What is there a range of milligram that you're taking?
I'm taking 3,500 per dose, which is pretty high. But again, I'm looking at my body weight plus about, I'm consuming somewhere around 6,000 calories a day sometimes.
God damn.
So
you're talking 3,500 milligrams of CBD.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty high.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the way, I sell it, I've got the Trico CBD oil for dogs and I take it myself and I love it, but I don't know if maybe it's, if it's microgram or milligram, maybe difference or something. But I mean, the bottles we've got 200 bottles, 500 bottles. Hopefully we'll come out with 1,000 milligram bottle. But so there's got to be a difference. And
they're totally. So I have a 500, I have a 1,500, and a 3,500. And then I have hemp oil, which just quick education for folks. CBD is a single cannabinoid. Forgive that I can never pronounce that damn word, but it's a single sort of, we'll call it, I always use this as an example is, look at vitamins, like you take a multivitamin, it has multiple different vitamins that make up the multivitamin. That's what hemp oil is, because there's a couple hundred of cannabinoids that make up hemp oil. CBD is one of them, as far as I understand it, right? And we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what does this drug do? What is it? Is it anxiety? Is it inflammation? Is it, and what dosing? And we're not quite, no one really knows, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, for the partnership that I have in terms of selling CBD oil, the CBD and hemp oil difference is none. The difference in terms of the structural makeup, there's a significant difference between it being a full spectrum CBD oil versus an isotope. And the way I explain it to people is it's like from concentrate or fresh squeezed.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Isotopes are like from concentrate, full spectrum is fresh squeezed. So you want to stick to a full spectrum oil. But at least for us, in terms of the legality aspect of the oil, strangely enough, for Amazon, it's got to be labeled hemp oil, and everywhere else it can be CBD. But it's the exact same shit.
Yeah, I think, was it 3 weeks ago the DEA lifted it, CBD as a class 1, right? Or Schedule 1?
Yeah, I mean,
but it's still being enforced. I mean, to some degree, but
yeah, I mean, it's kind of a gray area, product for sure. But like I said, I've had phenomenal results with myself and with dogs with CBD oil too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because I was just thinking, like, with just animals in general. I think that there's so much interesting stuff about the potential.
Yeah,
that's what I'm excited about. Like, I'd like to stand up on top of your desk and go, "This stuff is the greatest thing ever." And some right, it really has helped me.
Yeah.
But I don't like not knowing the mechanism. Yeah. That makes me mad. Like, internally, like, I'm frustrated. I'm like, I want to know.
Yeah.
Because I know it's working.
Yeah, I mean, the neat thing about dogs is there's no placebo effect with them. They don't have a fucking clue.
They just work. Yeah.
So like, if it works or not, because it's not.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But so going back to, or getting further into the nutrition aspect, I know I've tried fucking everything. I mean, there's, in the last, 30 years, 25, 30 years, there's been such a paradigm shift of what's healthy versus what's not. I mean, it's kind of always been that way, but I know for me, I subscribe to, I would say, generally speaking, a modified keto, but I'm curious to get your take from a performance
probably
standpoint.
similar. I used to call mine not quite keto. Yeah. And that's when, like, Stan Efferding coined his meal program, the vertical diet, which is the diet that I've been following now for almost 2 years. I didn't know it was called the vertical diet, but essentially what the vertical diet is, if it came from God, you eat it. Yeah. Right. If it grows from the ground, you eat it. Yeah. If it has 4 legs or 2 legs or quacks, you eat it. Yeah. Like, if you go into a grocery store, you only buy what's on the outside, except for the rice and beans aisle. Like, I don't even go down the aisles anymore unless I have to get something specialty. In terms of your carb sources, and I know, like, for me, just kind of real quick, I drink my breakfast. I do bone broth and coffee with MCT oil and a lot of the supplements that I take, and then usually we'll work out midday, and then we'll eat my first real meal generally after that, and it's usually fairly low in carbs, good clean protein, not a lot of fat for that, because I've taken a lot of fat in the morning, and then at night, kind of stolen from the Ben Greenfield mentality of doing a little bit of a kind of a modified carb load at night to sleep well and replenish glycogen and liver stores. To be able to perform if I'm working out hard, consistently. And that's what you can get away with all sorts of stuff if that workload is consistency and you're actually conscious of what you're putting in your body. Yeah. So for me, my carbs typically are always pre-post. I preload between 17 and 30 minutes prior with very specific carbs to get an insulin spike.
And what do you use
specifically? I use a product called Go Condition 1. They're bars, but they're all it's a veteran company. It's all organic. It's all free. It's basically I know I'm getting a clean fuel, but I want fuel to do one thing that I don't want it to do any time else during the day. I want a really clear insulin spike, something to where, and people don't realize what that feels like. It makes you real jittery if you just let it go. Yeah. So I don't eat carbs at all. So when I take these carbs, we're talking like 40 grams at a single dose.
What's the name of the bar again?
Go Condition 1.
Go Condition 1.
Yeah, they're fantastic. It's the only bar that I'll eat because it's, well, and then the perfect bar, which is it's just basically peanuts and just mashed into a bar. So if I'm going to go a high volume, high intensity, I go for the insulin spike. If I don't, I eat fat. I just eat peanut butter. For that insulin spike, one thing I'm curious, like, is it, let's say you're going to do an hour jiu-jitsu or a super high, like what's the shelf life? Yeah. So that's specifically for weight training. Cause the extreme is bodybuilders.
Yeah.
They're that big because they are taking their insulin, they're injecting their insulin right before they work out, but in between though they eat. Like, so that's where it's like, it's a taking, again, I am not advocating injecting insulin in yourself, but in the bodybuilding world, how it works is you take the injection and I mean immediate. I'm talking within minutes, like with less than 4 minutes, you have better be just slamming carbs into your mouth. And that insulin spike goes even through the roof. And then they go to the gym and they pump it. So insulin just jams, like volumizes your muscle. It just inflates. So that's why bodybuilders, they cut out all the carbs going into their show, but like the night before their show or the day of the show, they just eat a ton of carbs. You blow up. So I time it to where I'm getting that spike when I'm in the weight room. And fortunately my weight room's in my house. So I can time it. Like I wait to myself to get a little bit antsy and I'm doing my warm up and then I just hit it. I go.
I mean, to me, it seems like, for lack of better terms, maybe kind of an advanced protocol, programming wise. I mean, for two things I'm curious of is, number one is how long does that last? Like if will you get
about 40 minutes?
And so like if you're doing an hour, like you'll crash.
No, I don't. I just don't have have that same
level of intensity, like gas tank.
No, it's more natural than that. It's like I have plenty in the tank. I just can't go at the pace that I'm doing. And so that's my measure. That's where I just go, there's a drop off.
Sure.
And that drop off usually, it doesn't last more than about 46 minutes. 46 minutes is about as long as it's ever lasted for me.
Give or take.
Yeah, I know. I'm a number nerd for sure. So like I pay close attention to that because it's the way that I wrap my head around changes.
Sure. Yeah. So for the for those instances, like when you don't do that, could you walk us through kind of a typical day of what your nutrition looks like? Yep.
So my breakfast, I kind of talked about before. I have the 5 to 6 eggs, whole eggs, fried with real butter in a cast iron skillet, free range eggs. That's what and I have my bacon. Things. Since Amazon was bought by Whole Foods, it's pretty awesome because Whole Foods delivers to my house. So that's a pretty good deal. So I have my bacon, I have my avocado, and I have my drink like I mentioned before. And then about an hour and a half later after that breakfast, I'm going to eat a fat source. It's usually nuts. I'll have fruit. I eat a lot of fruit as well. So that's kind of like the carb thing, but I use fruit differently because of the fiber in it. And I usually it's mangoes, plums, pineapples, and peaches. So real high fiber fruits. That's what I usually eat for a snack with fat. Mm-hmm. So I want that fat to be with high fiber because it satiates and it slows that digestion process down. It takes that insulin spike and just chills it out. So then lunch comes along. Lunch is usually, again, I run the vertical diet. It's bison. Usually my lunch is usually either salmon, bison, hamburger, or a steak. And that's usually about 6 to 8 ounces of that, 6 to 8 ounces of either white rice or sweet potato. Well, sweet potato is usually about 12 to 14 ounces. And that's my lunch. And with that, I'll have more fat. I'll probably have some avocado with it. And then an hour later, depending on what that workout looks like, my day, because I usually train sometime around 3. So about 3 and 3:30, my pre-workout is, I use a nutrient-based pre-workout. Like I've kind of I didn't develop it. It's just, I don't want to stimulate. I don't use caffeine much, except for its very, very, very specific reason. So my pre-workout is a Muscle Monster, the new Muscle Monster, because they're only down to 5 carbs or 24 grams of protein. And then I have my fat with it. Either I'm going to do the Go Condition one, if I'm going to do high volume squat, high volume deadlift, high volume bench, or high volume just total workout, like body workout where I want, then I'll add the Go Condition. Otherwise, I'll do the peanut butter bar with the Muscle Monster. Before Muscle Monster had its new formula, I would just mix up a protein shake, 25 grams of protein, and I'd usually add, I'd use water pre-workout. Post-workout, it's 5 grams of creatine, whey protein, and I use 12 ounces of whipping cream, whole whipping cream. That's what I mix it with usually in water. Yeah. That's my post-workout because I want to be satiated because I don't like eating an hour after I train. I can't get the calories I need. So I up my fat as much as reasonable post-workout. So I'm satiated for 90 minutes and then I eat. Yeah. And then my dinner is the same thing. My dinner is usually probably 30 to 40 ounces of lean meat and fat. And then I usually I only typically eat just raw carrots or broccoli.
30 to 40 fucking ounces of meat. I
usually eat 4 to 6 fillets.
God damn.
It's funny. My son's 11. He's the same thing. My son eats exactly what I do, and he's 11.
So are you the one making all this shit? Or
Yeah.
God damn, man. It sounds like a part-time job.
Well, fortunately, I don't have a job. I work for myself. That's my job.
Yeah.
So, and I get it. Like, people are listening going, I can't live that lifestyle. Yeah. We're not asking you to. Yeah. Like, that's the thing is, like, this is my profession.
Sure.
And people, I guess the takeaway is this. The takeaway is be consistent. Plan your meals ahead of time. And now that the world the way it is, there's so many options for meal services that are like, I get 11 meals for $84, and it's from the largest free range farm in the United States.
What's the name of that joint?
It's Stan Efferding's Vertical Diet, and the company is called Accelerate. I'll have to probably send you the link.
Yeah, we'll put them up.
Yeah. But that's the company that I was using. I was using Trifecta. I've tried. I like Trifecta. Mm-hmm. It's just way more expensive, and it's not as good.
Yeah.
So that's what I run with, and those meals are cool because you can pick your portion size. They come in large, medium, regular, or large, regular, and small. So whatever you're doing, if you're bulking or leaning or whatever it may be, you just change your portion. It's already pre-made for you, but it's 100% organic, free range out of Idaho.
Is it never frozen, or is it?
It's frozen, but it's flash frozen. And it comes in this massive like styrofoam cooler, and it surprised me because I've had a lot of frozen meals, and these are fantastic.
Yeah.
So
that's good. That's good to know. A couple other questions in terms of you specifically. Number one, is that based on that, like that's what you do at your job, whatever. A lot of people are listening like, fuck, I can't do that. Is that something that you provide where somebody can come to you and say, here's my fucking lifestyle, here's my goals, and you shit out a program for them? Okay.
Yeah. So like that typically happens in person. So I with my website, and I have my programs on there and such, but my daily routine, I take on 2 clients or 4 clients a week. That's all I take on. They come to me, they travel to me, and for 5 days they live my life.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, they live every moment. I do every rep, but I do it. It's their program.
Yeah.
So they come and stay in Virginia. They meet me at my house. I cook them breakfast.
Oh shit.
Yep. We eat it. We go from there. We go to the pool, or go to the track, go to what we're going to do. We do that. I hook them up to heart rate monitors. We work them through and go, this is what's going on with you. Yeah. And then for the whole week, I put them through a program in which that's the way they should be.
Yeah.
Based off of what I'm seeing.
And then they go home and replicate it.
They do it. Yeah, it's all replicatable. Oh, so awesome. And that's like, for me, is that's what I'm doing, and that's how I do it. And that's what I do with my pro athletes, as well as my UFC fighters and my whoever that comes. Yeah. Is I don't train kids anymore. It's not because I don't enjoy kids. It's I don't enjoy parents. So and that's and anybody that knew me previously knows I have a real history of telling parents to go fuck themselves, especially when they're doing really stupid stuff to these kids. Man, these kids deserve way better than like, oh. Anyway, we'll get off soccer dads for a minute, but anyways, I just that's for me is I just get a routine, and this is kind of like a stupid statement, I suppose. Like, don't start anything that you can't maintain, but you don't know if you're going to maintain it until you start it. But I think that one of those things that what I would suggest to not do to most people is because unilaterally you're usually talking training and dietetics. That's what we're usually talking both in the same conversation, right? Don't change them both right away.
Yeah.
Change only one of them.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, it's like people go, which one? Well, which one are you most likely to stick to? Yeah. That's the one you start with.
Yeah. From my, just my perspective, I guess, I think, to me, it makes sense to get your diet where it needs to be first.
For sure.
Because that's fueling everything else. Like, to me, if you're making a drastic physical change, but you're not putting what needs to go in the gas tank, like you're going to set yourself up for failure.
You're already 30% in deficit. And then I totally agree with that. You know, if I was going to pick one, it definitely would be diet outside of if the problem is like, I don't know, we just need to get this person moving, they're going to die kind of thing, which I haven't really encountered other than 1 or 2 people, but like that. But you know, it's for me, this stuff is, and admittedly, this stuff is kind of, it's very enjoyable to me. So it's much easier for me to implement change than your average person. But also, like, I've literally had a gym membership. I'm 40. My first gym membership, I was 12. Yeah. And I've lifted literally, when I say literally, the only time I ever had a break in training was Buds. Yeah. And even in Buds, on the weekends, I'd train across the street.
Jesus Christ.
So not heavy or anything like that. It was more of a mental sort of like, I'm familiar with the weight room. It's my space. It's away from everyone else. But it's still like, I didn't know what I was again, his ignorance of it is I didn't realize I was doing really good active recovery.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, that's a perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about is active recovery and basically injury prevention / auxiliary movements, preventative maintenance, things like that. If you could speak to that, I know that's a huge component.
Yeah. I think, the simplest thing to do is, as far as those auxiliary lifts and just other additions to the program is, again, I get a lot of questions is like, for example, is, hey, I love jujitsu. How do I fit that into my weight training? Well, you treat, in my opinion, especially working with the guys I do in professional fighting, you know, UFC and such, is that we want, how do I say this? Let me start over here. You know, the big takeaway for those guys with the fighters and such is that, you know, they're no different than anyone else, right? It's a routine, and that's what this all kind of comes down to. But
so you know, what I'm curious of is like, how do you, from an active recovery and you know, not even a rehab standpoint, but like a preventative maintenance.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so I've had too many concussions. Gotcha. Okay, so from a rehab preventative maintenance standpoint and training is, I like to plan those days. If you can plan them ahead of time, great. But I always like to have those days when it's, the problem with overtraining isn't a person's intent. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to go to the gym or they're going to go train, whatever it is. And so I like to use those active recovery days as like, especially in the military space where it's like, I want to train. I really, really want to train, but not hard.
Yeah.
So this is a really good day to put in auxiliary movements. Like, that's what I call it, tricep cardio or bicep cardio. It's like, I really want to train today. I've slept good. You know, it's like a Saturday. Mm-hmm. I don't want to train hard. I want to kind of chill out from my 5 days of punishing myself, so to speak, or intense training. So what I'm going to do is use that. I'm going to create some prepackaged recovery days. Yeah. It might be in the pool, but I also like look at it and go, each person has something that their movement patterns are probably familiar with. You know, it maybe be swimming. It might be an easy jog. It might be go play golf. Mm-hmm. It might be frisbee golf with your kids, something. And I like to use that as my own training day. Yeah. And then it's like, well, if I have anything left, I might go do a bit of a run afterwards or go do a swim. But from an active recovery standpoint, the best thing to do is do what you're most competent about. You probably don't want to learn an Olympic lift, even if the intensity isn't high on your off day, because your nervous system might be like, wait, man, we're not equipped to get this bar overhead and settle.
Yeah. I know, you know, for me, and you know, I'm curious to get your opinion on it, is one of the ways I like to look at it is that, you know, if I wake up and I'm like, God damn, my ass is dragging a little bit physically, whether it's, you know, I didn't maybe get enough sleep or I pushed it the last couple days too hard, is that if I'm feeling like that, and for you fucking slack asses out there, don't wake up every morning and be like, oh, my shoulder's a little stiff, let me take an act. No, that's not what I'm saying. Like when your body's like, motherfucker, you need to throttle it back. Take an active recovery day. The next day, if it's the same, do it again. Do it until you wake up and you're like, yeah, I can feel like I can push it. Then go fucking push it. Is that a good?
No, and I think that's really good advice. It is, because what it allows, if you do that long enough, the days that you're gonna have to take off will become less and less.
Yeah, like you're building your stress threshold.
Yeah, and that's the thing is if you work on that stress threshold early. Like if you, let's say the first, the January 1st comes around, everyone in the world, this year, January 3rd, everyone will have a fitness membership, on Wednesday, January 3rd, everyone will have a gym membership.
Yeah.
Well, they get in there and they have these fantastic results that they see and they feel, but it only lasts a couple weeks, and that's a neurological adaptation. Yeah. And then we got to get in there and change that. But that's the big thing with a lot of people, is that it's not just the physical that we're really trying to appease. Mm-hmm. The physical discomfort that you're feeling is like a check engine light on your car. It doesn't necessarily mean anything's broken. It doesn't even necessarily mean anything's even damaged or out of the sorts. It's like, hey, the oil, kind of like oil that comes on. Well, it's reading that. It's reading the viscosity of that. The computer is, and your nervous system is the same way, right? You should be able to go, I'm taking the day off, and you come back, and that should be a good go. Oh yeah, I'm only a 1 day off kind of person after at a certain point. Sure. Well, sometimes it's 2, but if you look back at what you've done, and that's why I catalog everything that I do, is because I want to be able to look back and go, well, historically, my 5 days of intensive training that incorporated these modalities, I've been consistently taking 1 day off and been able to recover. Well, now I'm on day 3. Am I getting sick? What's my sleep been looking like? My traveling? There's certain variables that tend to be pretty obvious, but I coach the way I do, and I'm opposite of the people that just like, give me your information. And I'll give information. But for me, sustainability is only as good as somebody I guess I say this, the more you need me, if you listen, the less you'll need of me in the future. And that for me is a sign of a good teacher, I think. Yeah. And you think about the people that you've mentored and the people that you've mentored under, that's really what it comes down to, is like, you have been given enough information to progress your knowledge, and then when you run into gaps, you got to find people to fill those gaps of knowledge. Yeah. And that's what I like to tell people, is like, when it comes to overtraining, is you are doing yourself a real service by taking an active recovery day, because what do we want to do? We want to train hard. Yeah. That will allow you to do what you want.
Well, and one thing just to clarify too, the difference, between an active recovery day and a day off. To me, it's active recovery. You can fall into the mentality of, it starts off as an active recovery day, and next thing you know, an hour and a half later, you've done a full goddamn workout. So be cognizant of that. But I think, there's a lot of elements to where a legitimate, full-fledged, actual active recovery day is more beneficial than doing nothing at all, in terms of, getting your...
Typically, that could be very true. And that's just because I always say locomotion is lubrication. If you look at like my mom, and she's 73. When colder weather is coming to Iowa, but she push mows the yard. Yeah. That's what she does, and she rakes it then afterwards. And every morning she gets up and gets on the treadmill, and she does her band work. And she's not fit by any stat, but with all the years as a chef and cutting and certain things, and her arthritis is pretty bad. Yeah. And one of the best things for residual soreness is increased blood flow. Yeah. Right. And how do we do that without raising our elevator heart rate? Well, how do we elevate our heart rate? A little bit of exercise. Yeah. Goes a long, long way.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of just, light rowing, light bike work, if I can go for a brisk walk. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
But
mow the yard.
Yeah. The last kind of component of us talking before we wrap it up here, I wanted to talk about, it's kind of a 2-part thing, but just, in terms of, because I did want to talk about the, some preventative exercise and stuff, but I think it's just beyond the scope of trying to explain things on a podcast. But one of the videos on your Instagram I saw recently was like your feet were up on a band and you were on parallettes and
pressing. And
if you can just talk a little bit about those types of things and the importance that they play without,
Right. So it admittedly, even in the caption, I was like, this is kind of goofy looking. Certainly it is. But the purpose behind that, in referencing that was, if you look at my shoulder angle and my hip angle, it's like a windshield wiper. Mm-hmm. They're in unison. So like when we run and jog, it's called opposition. Whatever happens to my left shoulder happens on my right hip. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do, especially what I was doing, is I was trying to get my shoulder blades to glide along my rib cage. naturally as I was engaging my hip flexors, which is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So basically I just put myself upside down. I did an overhead squat using my hip flexors to gain traction on my lower back so I could get my arms overhead.
Yeah. And so to me, the takeaway that I get from that, and that I hope listeners can understand, is the importance of doing things like that to balance things out, these auxiliary movements, to not get into the rut of, bench, fucking squat
every day.
Like, you got to
if
do
that's
those
your
things.
sport, great.
Yeah.
But and fortunately I'm in a position where I tell people like, what's your training methodology? And I go, well, it's kind of like the crash test dummy. I get in there and I throw myself into a position and see if I can do a couple things. I can get stronger. I can either maintain or improve my mobility or maintain and improve my flexibility. Yeah. And then the last piece is make sure I maintain, I don't like to say necessarily neutral, but like a predictable, stable spine that I'm not like worried about whether my arms are overhead or my hands are at my chest or my arms are out like a T. Like I need to be able to maintain a really strong spine over my hips. Yeah. And if I do that, I can live a healthy lifestyle for a long time if I preserve my hips and spine.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you're going to lessen damage in your shoulders, you're going to lessen damage in your ankles, you're going to lessen damage because of, you got to figure if like for running, for example, all that ground force is coming from the ground. It's going through the feet, knees, hips, ankles, or whatever. If your spine is misaligned, your shoulders are out of position, you've exacerbated that stress. And that's why I say movement matters most. And that's why I tell people when you get training, really take your time and learn the exercises, because that's going to, when you first start training, your body is going to hurt really bad. It should. And that's okay. But we don't want it to hurt, like be painful, and that residual soreness becomes pain. And then you don't train because you're in pain. Yeah. And we want people to identify the difference between pain and, I call it, stress that's not outside what you perceive an acceptable limit.
Yeah.
And that's tough for people. And that's why they kind of bring this big ship around, is like, that's why I just said, hey, just get into training. Yeah. Because we want you to experience all of these things, the good, the bad, make mistakes, because then when you're able to have a conversation with somebody that's training you, then all those answers seem so much more obvious, right? It's just like, oh shoot, I was doing that. And I was like, and they go, well, you should have done this and thought about this. And I go, oh, then once it is jujitsu. I think that was a point I failed to make before, is like, jiu-jitsu is a perfect example of how weight training is. You go in with a white belt mentality. For real, go in there and learn. And the tough thing then becomes is, who do I learn from? Yeah. And I always say, and I believe this, and I know there are people out there that will disagree with this, and they should, because they're a bit older. But I'm a believer. It's like when I can no longer tell people to do what to do, I want to phrase that. I am going to do what I can do to teach people and show them how to do it until I can't do it anymore. Yeah. And at that point, I still think that I'll be able to, again, execute the movements eloquently. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to move the weight that but I think I'll always be able to teach it. Yeah. And that's what I want. I want people to know. I want people the people that they're training from, if they're prescribing only one genre, like I tend to say, hey, you might want to shy away. If they're speaking in absolutes, you should always do this. You should never do that. I try to stay away from that as much as I can, because that to me shows someone's insecurities. Yeah. They want people to believe in what they're talking, because if they get outside that realm, they might be exposed as being less knowledgeable than they appear to be. Yeah. And we've all been down that road.
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to the ego thing. You don't want to seem like an idiot. You mentioned grappling a couple of times. Do you go regularly? Or?
Yeah, it's funny. I did it for a number of years in Muay Thai. I'm redoing my tattoos. I'm adding color to them all. Yeah. And I probably have at least another 6 or 7 more. When that's done, I'm going to pick it back up. I've decided, I really do believe this, with my background in wrestling and exercise science and sport and such, is that I can't think of any sport right now where I think that really learning the some of the finite minutia that is so beautiful jiu-jitsu, it's certainly going to make me a better teacher and coach.
Yeah.
And I really understand physiology real well in the context of wrestling.
Yeah.
And I do have some guys I train, like I mentioned, in the fight world, but I want to get in there. And like you said before, it's like, I'm not afraid to get in there and be made a fool of.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm there for. I want to learn.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that, like, I'm really excited, especially since I have guys, my 3 closest friends, Mitch, Imani, and Damon, like those guys are like, they're all, brown belts.
Yeah.
And pro fighters. And it's like, what a great tribe that I can just jump in. Even Kyle.
Yeah.
Like, I really want to wrestle Kyle because that sumbitch with no arms and legs is probably legit. He is legit. I've seen him, but I've never wrestled him or jiu-jitsu, rolled with him. But I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. No, it's good shit. So now to the last 2 topics I wanted to talk about, hormone replacement, steroids, supplements of in that class. Just kind of a quick, what's your take on that stuff? I know as guys get older, there's a lot of hormone replacement stuff.
Yep.
And obviously from a performance world, whether it's high-level military, high-level professional athletes, like, steroids and anabolics and pro hormones and things of that nature are all an element of it. What's your philosophy on them across the board?
Yeah, I think again, like, it's a moderation thing. It's prevalent. I can speak to myself. I've used a fair number of anabolics over the years. Over the last 5 years, the only thing I take 200 milligrams of testosterone once a week, and it's prescribed. With my concussions, my testicles don't work normally, so my body doesn't make the testosterone that it normally did. My pituitary gland was from all the blast is all jacked up, but I feel pretty good. But anyway, back to testosterone. I take testosterone. Anavar I've tried. The thing is what I've found to be the most useful prior to getting to that point is if you get your sleep in order and you get your dietetics in order, when you introduce, then that's the thing is, like, if you take a lot of anabolics and your eating and your sleeping is sloppy, you'll look sloppy. You will look like a big sloppy guy or woman. If you train properly, even, or if you can almost train improperly if you're sleeping and you're taking it, you're going to start aesthetically looking pleasing, probably for your own take. But, I am... in the bodybuilding world, very different. Like, that's not even something we're talking about, I know. But like in our place with TRT, I think that when you're dealing with a very high stress job, it's probably a good idea to get baseline. Yeah. If you're joining the military, you're in the military, you're young to it, or law enforcement, or even like a high stress corporate job, get your testosterone checked, get your free testosterone bound, vitamin D, insulin-like growth factor, growth hormone, all those, get those checked. Yeah. Because inevitably with age, they're going to decline, but I'm going to make a statement and say that I probably could stand behind it, probably factually, is that, in the SEAL community, those guys are, believe it or not, probably pretty low testosterone because cortisol's up, stress is high, and that's the thing is we look at those guys and go, how could their testosterone be low? Yeah. Like people I walked into Port Smith the first time in 2009 to try to get TRT because my testosterone was at 16. God
damn.
300 is low for a 40-year-old man, 50-year-old man. Yeah. A 60-year-old man, 300 is low. I was 26 and I was 0.16. I was 16. Yeah. They got me on gel. I got up to 86. It just didn't work. Yeah. I was so low, and again, I hadn't removed myself from that environment either. So that's not like people are like, well, I got to quit my job and get on testosterone. No, that's not what I'm saying. Yeah. But I'm a believer in it, especially in the world of recovery. It's just the very difficult thing, as we know, is manage it. Yeah. Like, more is not better. Yeah. Especially when you're just trying to be really healthy. Yeah. I can't see that I'd ever exceed 200 milligrams a week of testosterone.
Yeah. So I know a lot of the other stuff just wreaks havoc on internal organs and can raise issues with visceral fat and attack lipids and fucking just
those hormones are super
host of fucking
strong,
problems.
and that's why they're such a strong hormone, and especially some of the orals, Anavar not so much, but like Anadrol and some others, they're pretty nasty on your liver.
Yeah.
But the thing is a lot of that stuff now it's not as diverse as it once was, I don't think. Back then, there's a lot of talk about D-bol and DECA and equipoise and all those sort of things, and it was just a bit of a mystery. It's not so much like that anymore. There is enough anecdotal and there's enough information being passed from person to person now that it can be done relatively safely. Yeah. Don't email me or message me and ask me about dosing. I'm not going to answer. Yeah. But I just think that it's one of those things that for me, I'm 40 and I'm going to use because it's one of those things that is really helping me maintain a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up is just like some gear, some bullshit gear. And this is a perception of mine, but there's a lot of gimmicky shit out there. One of them, at least from my perspective, is those like hypoxic masks.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's like if there's about a handful of fucking people like Lance Armstrong at the peak, like I could see maybe fucking with that. But like, you'll see people and be like, dude, lose 40 fucking pounds and then worry about them. Shit like that. Like, is there some things like, these are a couple legitimate pieces of gear that are worth fucking with. Stay the fuck away from these that you could recommend that you can.
We jump on the bandwagon real quick. Yeah, not bandwagon. Altitude mask is absolute garbage. Yeah. You can't change the partial pressure of a mask. If you're at sea level, you have to, it's like when you dive mixed gas with a Draeger, right? Yeah. You can change the partial pressure of O2 because it's contained. Yeah. You're just restricting airflow. Restriction of airflow is not good for you. Like a person can make a statement and say anything's good or bad for them. You drink enough water, you're going to die. Yeah. Right. And it's called hyponatremia. Yeah. Right. You're going to deplete your body and your heart's going to fucking fail. Yeah. So you can say anything is going to be good or bad for you. People can, cause I get this all the time from firefighters. Well, yeah, but we use them and that cool, man. It's still a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, it doesn't make it a good idea.
So altitude mask can't work. Yeah. It's like sticking a fucking car on your face and saying this is good for altitude. Yeah. Literally, it's just as stupid. Yeah. So stay away from altitude masks. Things that you're definitely, I think, are definitely worth purchasing and definitely worth looking into. A good compression garment goes a long way. A real good, and again, Nike doesn't. I don't care what anyone says. Nike, you can fucking sue me because I know it's not true. Nike does not make a compression garment. Neither does Under Armour. Neither does Adidas. None of those companies. They make tights. Yeah. Right. If you wear a good compression garment, you're going to see a real value in your recovery. That's something worth looking into. Defend as a company, 2XU.
Is that during the workout?
Either one. Yeah. Pre or post, or again, this is one of those sort of like recipes. I have a whole recipe for what I do and different garments and such, but a good compression garment is readily available. It's relatively cost effective and it's useful. Yeah. If it's a compression garment, if it says compression on it, still doesn't mean it's compression.
Not a fucking rash guard.
Yeah. It's not, it has to be a medical, not medical is not the right word. Again, if you're going to buy Defend, 2XU, CEP, that's about it. That's about the only companies that I would recommend buying. Those are the only three that I know make a compression garment.
Okay.
So, and then, another piece of gear is, one thing, if you want to spend a little bit extra money, we kind of, the chili pad is a really good one, but for bed and sleep, but for recovery, like if I were to save the money and spend the money on one thing, it would probably be a Normatec, a pneumatic compression, sleeves for arms and legs or hips or whatever it may be. Yeah. That's a game changer. It's a good one. It's about $2,500 though. You're going to spend probably, I think, maybe about 1,700, excuse me, is what you're going to spend. As far as stuff that you should definitely look into trying, person should try float tanks. Definitely sensor deprivation. Is definitely worth your money. Definitely don't probably want to buy one. I'm putting one in my house, but, you don't have to. I am. IR sauna, long wave IR sauna is also really, really good.
What is that? Long wave?
Long wave IR. And
What's
then,
the deal with that?
Well, it's the wavelength of the heat and the penetration, the depth, right? How deep can that heat wave penetrate past the dermal layer to improve, right?
Are those crazy fucking expensive?
They're not. You can get them on Costco. You buy them on Costco. Yeah, they're not because the technology isn't. It's not very new, and so you can find some long wave IR saunas for $1,500 that you can fit 2 people in.
No shit.
Yeah, they're not super expensive. And my sister bought one, and she just bought it from Costco and just snapped it together. My sister did.
No
shit. Put it in her basement. Yeah.
Huh.
A buddy of mine that wrestled at Iowa, he's the one that turned me on to it, and. I just, there's no wonder. And now there's a lot of, so we talk about like the heat reactive proteins and all those sort of things that are super, super good for anti-inflammation. A huge gimmick. And I know I'm going to get some hate mail for this. Cryo, absolute gimmick. Okay. So the research is conclusive in the fact that it's just cold. And, especially if you're a non-responder. What does that mean? It's like if you hate confined spaces or you hate cold water, you're not going to be. It's like if someone is really, really against getting into, like they hate swimming, they're afraid of water, they're not going to do well in a sensory deprivation tank. They're not going to do well in a float tank. Yeah. Someone's deathly afraid of needles. They're probably not going to respond well to dry needling or acupuncture. Yeah. So that's also things to be considered. Again, there's so many things that I would say stay away from. But really, that doesn't. I think that most of these things are pretty obviously gimmicks anyway, and they're actually very few of them you find in like a traditional weight room anyway. Yeah. So it's just stuff you buy, but that I think that's extremely valuable. Yeah. And that's the cool thing about weight equipment now too. If you're going to buy weight equipment, you can get some reasonable stuff that's sturdy, doesn't take up a lot of space too, and so that's weight equipment. Yeah.
No, I mean, the thing for me that I value about technology now is that if there's any piece of gear, fucking research it. Mm-hmm. I mean, like on your goddamn phone, I mean, there's so many things you can find out about whether or not stuff is legit or not. Obviously, there's always supporting and antagonist, literature going both ways. But I think if you read between the lines a little bit and broaden your research perspective, you can generally figure out, what's total bullshit or worth getting or whatever based on who's using it.
Yeah, and I definitely don't take my word for it. I mean, I really do believe that it's like, I have experience and knowledge in that rural, but it's worth a shot because none of these things are going to harm you. And even if it's a placebo, or even if it's like you do have some acute positive feeling from doing cryo, like you really like it, then keep doing it. Yeah, you're getting a benefit, and so I just think that like that's one of those things that we you kind of said, it's like we've underutilized the importance of it.
Yeah. Last question before we talk about just some resources to find you. Most bang for your buck, 3 exercises and 3 pieces of gear. Like if you live in a place and you're like, I don't have a fucking unlimited budget. I need to get a couple pieces of gear for my house, and 3 exercises, 3 pieces of gear that people could buy to most bang for their buck.
Yeah, definitely get a squat stand because that's just a universal. I think you should get a squat stand. It doesn't have to be super robust. I know Sornex that's what I've got in my house, and a Rogue makes it. There's all that. That's a really cool thing is there's tons of variety. So squat stand is definitely, because you can do presses from there. Obviously, you can squat from there, and maybe it's adjustable, right? Or maybe just the J hooks come off. So you get a lot of. And then you get a bench that you can roll into the squat stand. Now I can press from it, right? I can be seated and press from it. And so those are the two things. And again, if we're counting dumbbells or whatever, I would get a set of power blocks. Mm-hmm. Those are probably the 3. But I'd even go say is like, home gym should be a squat stand, a bench, maybe a set of selector dumbbells of some sort, or maybe a couple sets of dumbbells, some bands, and like a suspension trainer, like a TRX. Yeah. From there, you look at that and go, obviously we got to get weights. We got to get weights for the barbell. Maybe get 300 pounds for the barbell. If you get that set up at your home, you can get 3 good training days at your house probably. You might outgrow it at some point, but I think if you find that you like that sort of home gym, then you just expand it if you can. Yeah, just one piece. And none of those things, because squat stands are just basically 2 T feet and 2 verticals, right? And they might have a horizontal support, but they don't. A lot of them now they go flush to a wall. Mm-hmm. And or they bolt into the wall. Yeah. So those, and as far as 3 exercises that I would do, again, those are squatting is paramount for me. And when I say squat, I just mean let's express the hip, knee, and ankle joints to the fullest while maintaining a straight spine. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's probably my number 1. I think that we definitely want to. We can't go without pulling. Pull-ups for most people might be a little bit difficult, but that's why we have the suspension trainers. We want to be able to work our way up to a pull-up or work our way up to a seated band row.
Yeah.
Like those are hugely important, I think. So for me, it's like, it's going to be pulling. So I'll deadlift and squat, and I'm going to do some band stuff, pulling, TRX, rows, all that stuff. And then you would just get into all sorts of ancillary stuff that comes after that. Because if you have strong glutes and hips and a strong back, you can go pretty much anywhere from there.
Yeah. That and an altitude mask in your ulcer.
Yeah, always. Yeah, absolutely. Make sure it's pink.
Yeah. It's good shit. I mean, fuck, we've been talking for 4 hours, almost here. So, that's about as long form as it gets. But,
Yeah.
I could sit here and talk to you for fucking days and pick your brain. But, for everybody listening that wants to find out more, can you highlight some resources for training, whether it's you or even some other one, online books, conferences, workshops? Where can people find you? How can they, expand on what we've talked about today?
The fastest way to find me is Instagram. I don't monitor Facebook at all. I don't monitor. There are all accounts that are created that I just kind of lost favor personally. So I don't have LinkedIn. There's an account, but I don't follow it. My website it's a small source of information, but that's where I host my programs and such. That's where you can find those. People that I definitely would encourage you guys to listen and follow. Well, unfortunately, some of the best coaches that I know don't have social media. They're busy coaching, and that's the thing that some of the unique sides of where I'm at. It's like I can do a lot of social media stuff if I wanted to, but Cal Dietz at the University of Minnesota is extremely, extremely knowledgeable on a lot of this sort of stuff. Stan Efferding, Mark Bell, Bert Soren down at Sornex. Not only are they making the equipment that they make, but the knowledge behind it with their staff, like all of their strength coaches at Sornex, like the salesperson that does California is a former strength coach at USC.
Oh shit.
The Texas one is Trey Zapata. He's a former strength coach at UT for 14 years he was. So all of their salesmen are all strength coaches in their own right.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool source is Sornex, and everything they do is pretty cool. But for me, it's I read most messages. I respond to the ones that formulate an eloquent question.
Yeah.
I don't respond to text language. I don't respond to bro, dude, hey, bud. I don't respond to any of that.
Yeah.
So don't start it that way. If you know me, you can call me bro or bud, but let's not mistake the fact that you don't. So not you, Mike, but others. And I don't mean that to be rude. I just mean that in the sense of.
No, I agree. I mean, like if you can't, if your respect is lacking to the degree in which you can't even be fucking respectable right out of the gate, like go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like there's a lot of people I don't respond to, or the people that run my social media primarily, because most of the time I'm just being upfront with all you assholes out there listening is that it's a lot of times not me talking via messenger, but I can't stand that shit either. It's like, broken sentences. I mean, it's one thing if English is a second language, but even then, like, I don't know what I'm.
Yeah, I get emails all the time. I mean, I get good or bad. I get a fair amount of emails most days, and I got an email the other day from someone that's going to the German Defense Force.
Yeah,
beautiful. His second language is English, and he gave me a great email, so I responded.
Yeah.
Right. Someone's like, "Hey, bro," like. Yeah, I just delete. If I see bro, I just delete it. If I say dude, if I see it, I just delete it. Like in anything. So let's not start off with that. But that's I'm pretty responsive. I think that my YouTube channel has a couple hundred videos on it.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to get into the military and want to I'd say that just because I created that resource mowing my lawn one day. I was like, man, I'm getting all these emails and I'm spending so much time responding, which were great. And I was like, well, where can I just do a frequently asked question? So I just started compiling those questions and making videos on just anything, like pretty much everything that you and I've talked about is already on YouTube. And
that's a great resource. Where can people, what's the channel name?
Just look at my name, just do Jeff Nichols, and you'll see, and there's a couple hundred videos on there.
And is your website same?
My website is performancefirst.us.com. I know, but if you go to my Instagram, if you go to my Jeff CSCS, the link is in there, pretty easy to find. But again, that's how I was mowing the yard one day, and I was like, man, I just I just want to focus on performance first. That's how I was. And then I was like, okay, that's how the whole business kind of started.
Yeah.
And it's been really fulfilling for me, and it's gotten me to meet a lot of fantastic people, and it's what I'm passionate about definitely right now, and I'm looking forward to progressing it, whatever that means. I'm not trying to control it like it's like this fragile little thing anymore. I'm doing a lot better job of just letting it grow, and then wherever it takes me, I'm just filling in the gaps.
Yeah, no, it's great shit. Well, you heard it here, folks. We've covered a lot of info, all great shit. Again, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your schedule to come all the way here and chew the fat. Thank you for coming. As always, anything you want to say or mention or shout out before we close it up?
No, I just appreciate you for having me. Yeah. I think that there's a real interest, I think, within society to find people, and it's kind of what we talked about before. Is I don't pretend to call myself a role model in that regard, but I also do think that as a like you and I and like all of us, like that's the role model. It's us as a collective, because I think that I've been short before on things I've said about people, and I've said some shitty things about people that I regret. But I think that for all of us that came from our community, specifically the SEAL community, and specifically from the veteran community, it's really cool to see people having a voice and having, because I think that was one of the big problems we've had for so long before podcasts. It's where do we find good information, or where do we find people that are offering information that we can track stuff down, like in the show notes. Yeah. And I think for you, I think I just appreciate you for doing what you do, and and for putting me through SQT.
Yeah, no, it's fucking small world. Good shit.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's fucking awesome. Again, it's my pleasure having you on. Appreciate you coming. For all the listeners, as always, I can't thank you guys enough for supporting us and giving us a medium to be able to bring this amazing fucking show to you. If 4 hours is too long for you to listen, you know what I'm going to tell you is to go fucking choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.